I mean,
I saw it on Riverside.
We're alive.
No, dude, it's not showing on YouTube.
What's it?
It's just the. Oh, there we go. Here we go.
Finally. Oh my God.
We
Dude, this stuff is so scary.
We look way worse on live.
What?
I don't like how we look on live. I don't know. There's a difference.
Like in real life versus a recording?
Well, definitely that. Yeah.
Well, bro.
Definitely.
We're waiting for our
Happy Thursday, Ben. Are we gonna? I think if our guest does show up,
he should,
which we think he will, and he's never flaked on us before. I think that this may be the episode to send us to jail.
This is it?
I think so.
This is the jail episode?
I mean, with everything that's going on, how can it not be? Like, how much worse?
Dude, has Palantir started? Like, are they already recording?
I think they've been doing it. They're just... No, here's what I think. I think that whatever platform we're using, whatever technology we're using, whatever brand we're using, I think they've all been recording and keeping track of all of it. They never discard any data. They never delete anything. Nothing's ever deleted. I think that it's all saved, and it's just a matter of being transferred to Palantir, and if it has or hasn't been already. But everything has been saved ever since we typed the first keystroke into our Apple Macintosh computers.
Boom.
Oh, that's a cool chair.
Yeah, he's got a good setup.
I like Cato's chair. Jealous. I need one of those.
So jealous.
I like this setup. You know, he did the same thing that John has, kind of like this chair thing. Oh, there you go.
Oh. Dude, this is like a behind the scenes.
This is footage. Behind the scenes.
This should be behind a paywall. This is the kind of quality material you get if you're a paid member.
Yeah, I don't know if this is good, but it's okay. Cato, we're live, buddy. Cato, we're live. I don't think
it's okay. He'll figure it out. Oh man, dude, it's funny.
Hey, I joined the podcast, but I can't flip my camera around.
So. It was flipped around.
You were fine just a second ago, right when you got on. It was.
Yeah, but then I can't see you guys.
Use your computer.
Hold on, I'm just gonna flip it around, and that way. No, that's gonna suck because I can't see you guys.
Use your laptop. You might be able to use your phone and your laptop at the same time as like a FaceTime.
We should probably get off of live.
Okay, we'll be right back. Actually, wait. I don't know. Does that work?
What? Say it again.
Does it work if you go offline and get back on? What happens? We've never done it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm so scared.
We can never have like just a good introduction to our show. Like I don't think we ever will.
Satana, bro.
It's Satan, or this is just our
or
shtick.
We're just dumb.
No, it's a shtick.
Well, hold on. Okay, let's think about this. Why? First off, where's my yarmulke?
It was there a second ago.
Satana.
Bro, I looked away and I looked back when you said that, and it's gone.
No, I literally was talking to you and it vanished. I didn't do anything.
The yarmulke got raptured.
Hey, it's interesting that only our show gets attacked spiritually by Satan. Nobody else.
Someone else said that. Someone else said it.
That's how you know, bro. That's how you know we're spitting truth.
True
Christians. Dude.
Ben,
I'm scared. I'm scared to get off the live.
Hang on. Yeah, I don't know if we should.
Should we just try it right now? Guys, we're sorry. If anybody's in here right now, we're gonna
Ben, is it just me or do I look kind of thin today? Like, do I look thinner than usual?
Dude, is this one of those things that like my wife does? Are you setting me up for something?
No.
Do you look thinner than usual?
I know you think I do.
I guess.
All right, we can.
But I don't know. I don't usually like check you out. Like I'm not.
Bro, with all the Instagram stuff you show me, you send me all day long. Never mind. I'll stop right there.
Okay. If I'm going to end it. And oh my God. That was so close. That was so close.
Okay, that's good.
Did
Now,
you-
can you see us,
Sorry,
buddy?
guys.
You're good, buddy.
Can you see us?
I can see you. Yeah, I don't know how good my signal is, so it doesn't seem to be working very well. I'm not sure why.
It looks clear.
Right now, you're good. Yeah.
If I look clear to you guys, then that's all that matters. You guys
Are
look
you on
fuzzy,
your
but-
Are you on your computer?
No, on my phone.
On your phone?
Wow, it actually looks pretty good on the boob tube. It looks good.
Yeah. It looks great.
Oh,
If you guys are happy, I'm happy.
yes, sir.
Let's-
Welcome back, Cato. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, likewise. How you guys been?
Doing for
Great.
now, fantastic. I was telling Ben that this might be the episode that lands us in jail.
Well,
So
not me. I'm good. I'm good. Hey, Cato, how's Mexico? You made the move, so he's not going to jail.
oh, can we say that he went to Mexico? Well, you already said it. So, by the way, Cato, we're live. We're live. We're live.
You-
Well, I'm not fully in Mexico. You know, I'm half and half,
Okay.
and right now I'm at my ranch. So
Nice.
I go back and forth, but I'm pretty much planning to get out of the country fully. That's my plan at the moment.
Dang. And is it
Yeah.
strictly because of like the current state of affairs, or is it
Yeah.
because you're also just like, oh, I like the food?
No, it's because of what's going on politically in this country. Yeah.
Damn. You think
I
it's
feel
that
like I'm
bad?
just reading the writing on the wall. You know, you guys know I'm really into history, and I've studied the crap out of history and politics and recognizing patterns and trends that go back many centuries. And I feel like I know which way the wind's blowing, and I think things are going to get really sketchy here.
How soon?
And what's that?
How soon?
Man, that is the million-dollar question that I get asked all the time, and I can't say because I've been thinking that things were going to come unraveled for the last several years.
Yeah.
And somehow things keep trucking along, just getting incrementally worse. So, and I feel like that's kind of the process of normalization, right? They get us used to an increasingly crappy situation politically, economically, with the debasement of the dollar, with the increase in online surveillance and invasion of privacy and all this stuff that just keeps happening. But it happens incrementally to the point where we don't really, I feel like it happens at just the right pace where we are annoyed by it, but not enough to make big changes in our lives. And in my
Right.
opinion, that is all, I believe that is fully intentional because I believe that they do tremendous amounts of data analysis on us, and they're constantly kind of adjusting the pace of the overall agenda to get it to just the right speed where they know that they're agitating people, but not enough to do anything about it and make a difference. They want to sort of, it's like hitting the accelerator pedal at just the right speed so that people don't really feel the acceleration. You know what I mean? We think we're
Dang.
coasting along, but there is a destination. And you guys know I'm really into conspiracy research, and I've been doing it a while. And there's been
That's
a
why
lot
we
of
like you,
a lot of
Cato. That's why we're
yeah,
friends.
a lot of the ideas, like in my research, there's been sort of surges forward in like conspiracy research. And the last one that I've seen is in the 90s. In the 90s, there were a bunch of conspiracy books that came out. And what's really interesting is when you research all this stuff, you find that it's not really political. There's people who would be called conservatives or Republicans. And on the other side, there's people who would be called liberals or Democrats. And a lot of them are saying the very same things, having the same prediction as to where things are going in the conspiracy space. And a lot of that stuff is coming true now. So, you know, stuff like, you know, the amount of surveillance, the amount of technological intrusion in our lives, the tracking, you know, you know, all that kind of stuff. There in the 90s, there was a big, I just made a video about this recently. In the 90s, there was a lot of sort of conspiracy theory about eventually people having chips in their hands, that we would have chips like implanted into us to sort of track our movements and things like that.
Right.
And I say, you know, they didn't have to implant chips in our hands because that's very invasive and that would get pushback. What they did was they created cell phones, smartphones specifically, and they made them so appealing that now everybody wants these chips. Everybody is being tracked and surveilled all the time. And it's actually considerably worse than the worst conspiracy theories, because the conspiracy theories were that we would be tracked, but now we're not only being tracked, we're being programmed.
Right.
You know, it's like a two-way conversation where we're consuming all of this propaganda and all this narrative, and things are being normalized in our minds. It's a war on our minds, and the cell phone is the ultimate tool for that war that's ever been created. And at the same time, we are being tracked, we're being geolocated, we're having all of our patterns and behaviors tracked, and then very, you know, we're receiving very fine-tuned messaging in order to condition what we think and what we do, and not just individually, but as all of society. So it's incredibly sophisticated, and something I've focused a lot of my research on is like social engineering. And so this is very, very sophisticated and advanced. And the most successful social engineering is that which people don't really perceive.
Right.
Or they might perceive limited parts of it, but they don't understand how vast it actually is. And so I think that if you ask conspiracy theorists from the 90s what, in a worst case scenario, what the world would be like in 20 or 30 years, I think they would not have guessed that it would be this bad. I think what has happened is considerably worse than the worst case scenario back then. So
what's interesting, bro, is even though maybe conspiracy theorists wouldn't have theorized it'd get this bad, dude, like Christians have been saying this for several decades, that there's going to be global surveillance, that there's going to be a one world government, that there's going to be technology that doesn't allow you to buy or sell unless you ingest it or whatever it is, you know, put it under your skin, like the mark of the beast, all that kind of stuff. So that, I mean, that's something even last time when we chatted, we talked about like Bible prophecy a little bit, and how what we were seeing at that time correlates, you know. And I was actually looking back on our interview from last time, just kind of getting ready for this one and trying to make a clip or something. And do you remember you predicted that like Israel would pull America into war with Iran?
I don't know if I predicted it at that time.
I'll send you the timestamp. I said, what's gonna happen? Like, what's next? And you're like, oh, World War III. And I'm like, what do you mean? And you're like, oh,
yeah,
we're gonna go to war with
Iran.
Iran.
We're moving toward that in the big picture. Yeah.
No, you're like, we're gonna go to war with Iran. And I'm like, okay, go on. You know? And that was 7 months ago.
I would say that hasn't happened yet. I mean, there's definitely like increasing rhetoric about that and stuff. But
I mean, we did.
But yeah, I mean,
bomb
are you guys
them.
familiar? Are you guys familiar with that leak or that list that was leaked by? I don't remember the general's name, but many years ago there was a general who basically leaked the fact that there was very high level discussions almost immediately after 9/11.
Yeah.
And basically all of the high level Bush administration officials had decided that there was going to be a series of 7 wars. And they were going to institute regime change in all of those countries. And I don't remember them off the top of my head, but at the time, Iraq was one, Libya was one, Syria was one, and so on. But the last one on that list was Iran. So even if you just take that, hey, we're 6 out of 7, there's only one left, it's got to be Iran. Like that, I mean, it's kind of like it's going to happen one way or another. And of course, there's increasing conflict between Israel and Iran. They're sort of like mortal enemies.
Yeah, it was General Wesley Clark, and it was seven countries in 5 years. That was the plan.
In 5 years, definitely didn't happen in 5 years.
Not the 5-year mark, exactly. But coincidentally, like you said, all of them except for Iran have toppled. You know, with our involvement because of America's freaking involvement. And I mean, listen, dude, we got close, man. We got close. Maybe we didn't go to like full-blown World War III, but I mean, come on, like 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, we were freaking on the horizon. We were on the precipice of that war, you know? And arguably it's not like that's done and over with. Anything could still pop off, you know?
Yeah.
But what do you think about the Gaza stuff that's going down? Any
Oh gosh. Yeah, I have a lot of opinions on that.
I mean, dude, what do you think their goal is there? Let's just start there.
Their goal, well, I think, are we talking short term or long term?
Start short and build to long.
Short term, so the conspirators, however you want to characterize them, they always do something that I call agenda stacking. And agenda stacking means everything that they do, every major operation that they're engaging in, there's multiple agendas at play. And typically they'll accomplish all of them on, whatever timeline. But even if they fail to accomplish one, they will accomplish other ones. So on the ground in Gaza, there's an enormous, I mean, I call it a genocide. And some people, I posted recently, there was actually there was actually people inside Google who were mad about the genocide, like internal employees, and they were circulating sort of like emails talking about how they didn't like being part of a company that was actively aiding the genocide because Google is providing like web or cloud services of some kind to the Israeli Defense Forces, and people had like a moral issue with that. And in the sort of discussion, someone mentioned the word genocide. And the CEO, who's Sergey Brin, well, I don't think he's a CEO anymore, but I'm not. He might be the chairman of the board, but he was the founder of Google. He basically, clapped back at that and said, "Hey, let's be real careful about this, throwing around genocide, because this is very insensitive to people who have suffered from actual genocides. So maybe we shouldn't use that
Wow.
term in this case." And I thought that was unbelievable, because there's many estimates of how many people have been killed in Gaza since this October 7th, in my opinion, a false flag. But it's at the lowest estimate that I've seen is 60,000, and 60,000
Oh my
is
God.
the number that the Israel government acknowledges.
Mm.
So
They
there's
acknowledge
that number, which is
60,000?
probably a lie. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably a lie. And thousands of them, like tens of thousands, are kids. I have a whole other article that I wrote about how many kids are dying from headshots, very accurately placed headshots there, because they're using them for target practice. And one of the most notable sources from that is actually a Jewish doctor from the United States who, was speaking out against that because he was appalled, and he got silenced fairly quickly. But anyway, so that's happening. But realistically, there's other estimates. The highest estimate I've seen is something like 300,000 to 400,000. So let's
my
just
God.
sort of split the difference and say it's something like 200,000. I mean, that is a genocide by anybody's definition.
Yeah.
So it is a genocide. I'm going to call it a genocide. I think there's absolutely no question that that's what it is. Israel calls it a war. All of their sort of propaganda is calling it a war, but it's hardly a war when you have one very dominant, very capable, very technologically advanced force that is just bombing the shit out of this region, and mostly it's just starving people trying to survive. I mean, I don't see how that's a war in by anybody's definition. So this genocide is definitely has multiple layers to it. So for sure, Israel wants to expand. They do not and have never accepted the possibility of a two-state solution. To them, Palestine doesn't even exist. And they're very, very threatened by the idea that Palestine could ever gain statehood. Now, surprisingly, out of, I believe we have 193 countries that are recognized in the world, and about 150 of those countries recognize Palestine as a nation. So
Wow.
most Americans don't even know that. America's obviously not one of them, nor is Israel. And, there's like 40 others that don't, but more are joining that. Some really big notable ones recently that have joined is France. Ireland did, I believe Spain did. Canada recently announced that it was going to, and Australia also recently announced that it was going to. So you have more Western countries that are now starting to say that Palestine should be recognized as a nation. To Israel, Palestine doesn't even exist. So they definitely want to expand, and there's some reasons for that, which we can get into later. They have to do with prophecy, but for sure, it's a land grab at one level. At one level, it's a land grab, and Gaza is very desirable real estate because it's right there on the coast, and it could be considered to be prime land because it's coastal in the Mediterranean. So the land grab aspect is one aspect. Another one is weapons development. So Israel is one of the world's most advanced and most prolific developers of weapons, military grade weapons. And a lot of countries in the world buy Israeli weapons. What the Israeli military is doing is they're using weapons and they're testing new weapon systems on the population in Gaza. And
Wow.
as they use them, as they develop more and more sophisticated, methods of killing people or maiming them, because they don't always necessarily want to kill them. Sometimes they want to kill people slowly. Sometimes they want to maim. Sometimes they want to injure. Some of the weapons or some of the chemicals and stuff that they're using in their weapons cause cancer and other degenerative, like debilitating diseases. So all that's happening, and what the Israeli weapons companies, which again have international contracts, what they can do is they can call these weapons battle proven. So the people who buy, Israeli weapons, they don't necessarily care that they are being tested on families and children and stuff. What they care about, these weapons work in the field, and technically these are being used and deployed in the field and developed in the field. So that will allow Israel to claim more legitimacy for their weapons, at least in terms of military effectiveness, and then sell those. And Israel has many contracts with many countries around the world. So that's another part of the agenda, is weapons development, then the land grab, of course, expansion for settler lands. And then at a higher level, I think there's sort of a prophecy thing. So you guys, because you're familiar with biblical prophecy, you know that in the sort of end times, all the Jews are supposed to be regathered into Israel. And it's sort of, how are they going to get all Jews to regather in Israel? if Jews live very well in other countries, most particularly the United States. So there has to be something, provoked to cause more Jews to move to the United States. And that's part of why I think we're experiencing an increase in anti-Semitism in the United States, because I think it's being manufactured actually by them. But setting that aside,
to get them to move to Israel.
Yeah, well, in the end time, I don't know the scripture, but I know that in the sort of end times prophecies, there are multiple things. I mean, it kind of all revolves around Israel, right? But the Jews need to sort of reconcentrate in Israel. They need to come from the diaspora, from their dispersed lands, reconcentrate in Israel, and then at some point, the whole world will be united against Israel. Israel would basically be like in a war with the whole world. And I think that's essentially what they're manufacturing now, that situation. But logistically, if that's going to happen, if they're going to gather more Jews by any means, however they come, whether they come willingly or whether they come because life becomes untenable for them in other places, they're going to need places to put them. And so that's why Israel is very aggressively trying to expand. They're trying to create room for the people that I think they're anticipating coming, because they're basically going to engineer the circumstances for them to come because life becomes untenable in other places. So that's why there's many layers to it, as there usually is. But in any case, it's evil. It makes me sick thinking about it every day. I research a lot of this stuff, and I have a group that I run. My group is like investment related, but it is sort of the dark side of investment related, because I acknowledge the fact that there's conspiracy and evil and false flags and all that kind of stuff that engineers the outcomes in our world. And that does have an implication on money and on various investments, on the price of gold, on stocks and all that kind of stuff. So I focus on that in the group. But because of that, I study this stuff every single day. I research it, and it's really crazy what's happening there and around the world. And it makes me sick to think about and read about, but it almost can't be stopped.
Well, I hope one of your guys' largest holdings isn't like Israeli weapons manufacturers. Although you'd probably be doing really good.
Holdings.
You know what I mean? You'd probably be doing really good right now. You'd be up.
But I saw a video recently about like them selling land already in Gaza.
I don't know if that was,
bro, not
pretty sure they've been doing that for many years.
Not selling it, they're giving it to the settlers already.
What do you mean giving it?
Yeah. They're giving it to Israeli settlers.
I think they have like a grant. They have like a grant program, I think.
Wow.
That's already begun. They're not even done like cleaning up rubble, and they're already giving it away to settlers. But hey, Cato, so you think one of the questions I had was like, hey, obviously the tide is turning in terms of like support for Israel. It doesn't matter if you're Christian, not Christian, it doesn't matter. Like you can see it and you feel it, and people are like kind of freaking out about it in the Christian community, like in our circles, and I was going to ask you about that. Like, what do you think that's all about? And if they control like media and are in positions of power and tech and all this kind of stuff, it's kind of interesting that they're like letting people like Nick Fuentes back on, and like they're promoting him in the algorithms and stuff like that. But you just connected a dot for me, which is persecution, global persecution against the entire nation is something that even in the Bible, it's prophesied that Israel will be persecuted in the end times by the entire world. Okay.
Right.
And it's almost as if what they're doing now is actually fulfilling that, but then they allow kind of the anti-Semitism stuff to run rampant online and in media and whatever, social media, because that too fulfills that prophecy of the whole world starting to turn against them, so that's a really, really interesting dot, man. Because I talk to people online as well, like mostly that are Christian, and just because we say, hey, it's not good what they're doing, what Israel's doing clearly by any standard is not good.
Right.
Okay. Just criticizing them will make some Christians be like, oh, you don't believe the Bible and you're not Christian and you're going to hell. And I'm like, what? Bro, when did you add like veneration of Israel to a criteria for salvation, And they'll say, you are somebody told me this. They're like, Israel will have to be hated and persecuted, and you're fulfilling biblical prophecy. That's what they told me. And I'm like, dude, this chick's crazy. Okay. But now now you're saying it from your perspective that this is something that they're kind of stirring up because they
Yes.
too are trying to fulfill that prophecy.
Yeah.
That's
Right. Right.
wild. Dude, that's so wild.
Yeah.
Do you,
And like
what,
they don't even really need to. So there's kind of two schools of thought here, and I'll address both of them because they're both quite thought provoking. One is that they are manufacturing, or at a minimum, allowing this anti-Semitism to increase in order to fulfill that prophecy. The other side is, because you guys know I've studied a ton of Jewish history, and there's very, very clear patterns in basically all of Jewish history. They've gotten kicked out of over 1,000 communities. People say over 100 nations. That's actually a huge underestimation. And they have very, very specific patterns of like abusing, especially financially, the communities that they live among and all this stuff. This goes back many, many centuries, even thousands of years. Really interestingly, you can read accounts written by the ancient Romans, various writers and sort of like political analysts of the ancient Roman times that describe Jews almost the exact way that they're being described today, and the way they were described in Germany and parts of Europe in the 1800s and so on. There's very, very consistent. So they almost don't have to manufacture these negative emotions towards Jews and the way they behave. They just have to allow it to proliferate, because once people find out the way they behave, they get mad. And all they have to do is allow it. They just basically have to like take the lid off and allow it to boil over. But they don't have to manufacture it. It's just going to happen as soon as people start learning about A, the behavior of these people, and B, their consistency in always stirring the pot and always like creating these problems and stuff. Once they allow people to know this stuff, then it's almost like there's an inevitable backlash. So on the one hand, you have this prophecy thing. On the other hand, you have kind of a controlled burn, let's call it, because they know that the more people find out, the more mad they're going to get. But what they would fear, part of their genius, which has been the case for several centuries, is in creating and managing their own opposition. This has been the case for many, many times, because if you imagine a group that's doing really bad things, they can pretty safely assume that at some point people are going to get wise to it and want to create some kind of organized resistance to it. This is something that they fear tremendously. So rather than allow that to happen organically, they kind of make it happen. And that's what I believe people like Nick Fuentes are. I think they're sort of, I don't know if he's necessarily part of the conspiracy, but certainly they allow some people to get very big as long as they are sort of blowing off steam, but they're not actually organizing any resistance. They have to just be professional complainers and allow people to complain and bitch and moan and feel like they're sort of, blowing off steam, but not actually do anything, because the talking heads that they allow to get big are not going to be political organizers. They're not going to run for office. They're not going to put together, political movements and start signing petitions and things like that. So it would be very threatening if people had an organic movement, but they don't want that. So they're allowing a movement they control to just blow off steam and really amount to nothing except a whole bunch of complaining. So there's two ways to look at it, and you could definitely argue that they're both the same movement, because they can allow it to blow over until they want there to be some kind of explosion, and then Jews start getting kicked out. But I don't really see that happening personally, because Jews are in such a tremendous power position in the United States at all levels. And even a lot of Jews themselves acknowledge it. Some Jews criticize that. They don't like it. They don't think it's good. And some Jews acknowledge it. And they're like, yeah, I mean, we are in a leadership position of the United States, and we need to do a good job with that. But, quite a lot of them do openly just sort of admit that they are in a controlling position of the United States. So I don't see any reason why they would give that up, as long as America is optimal as three things that I always say. I say this all the time. One, a debt slave labor camp that they can extract wealth from. Two, a social engineering laboratory. This is where they refine and perfect all of their narratives to spread out to the whole world. And three, I forget what the third one is, even though I say it all the time. Social engineering camp. Oh, and mercenary army. The third one is the mercenary army, where the U.S. military is basically a Israeli mission force at this point, and we may as well take the military marching orders from Tel Aviv at this point. So those three things, America is really optimal. But in order to keep fulfilling those roles, they would have to stay in a controlling position in the United States, and I just don't see them giving that up very easily. Even though, yes, on the prophecy side, they would all have to reconcentrate in Israel at some point. And who knows when that's going to be. I mean, I wouldn't say that's going to be in the next few years, in my opinion. but that is what the prophecy says. So I think that's what they're doing in Gaza, not just Gaza, all around Israel, because there's other occupations all around it. Gaza is just sort of the most explosively violent portion of that now, but they're spreading out even into like Syria and Lebanon. There's occupied portions of Syria and Lebanon that they have, and I think that they need to continuously expand into, eventually there's kind of an Israeli sort of quiet agenda to expand from I believe it's the Euphrates River to the I forget the two rivers, but that's what the two blue lines on the flag represent. They represent two rivers.
Whoa.
One is the Euphrates River, and I can't remember the other one. So it might be the Nile, but they're basically trying to expand Israel to that size. It's going to be a huge country, and in order to do that, they have to systematically grow and grow and grow and oppress nations around them and so on. It's certainly not going to be an easy project, but that is kind of a hidden agenda. So they need to keep growing. But I think there's a lot more use they can get out of the United States using it as those three things, just stripping us of our wealth, continuing to indoctrinate Christians and, get them to basically be on their side and donate money. I know a lot of, Christians donate money to Israel. I live in Texas, right? And when I'm not in Mexico and all around here, I see a lot of ranches and stuff, because I live way out in ranch country, that have, people will fly Israeli flags. It's quite common. And most often they'll fly it alongside the Texas flag or alongside the United States flag. So, there's, in the evangelical Christian community, you still see a lot of Israel support, and a lot of people, they're just going to go down with that ship. Like, they're just not going to sort of rearrange the way that they perceive Israel. So
sure.
As long as you have that community, as long as you have literally tens of millions of people in the United States that are very willing to support Israel, I don't see why they would give that up anytime soon. And besides, they're going to need our military, right? They're probably going to need our military, just like we did in Iraq and in those other countries that we talked about. It wasn't Israel doing the fighting. In fact, I don't believe that Israel ever committed even one soldier to the so-called global war on terror, even though that it was supposed to be a sort of global coalition, right? They always, I don't know if you guys remember, but in the news they always called them coalition forces. They didn't often call them American forces or U.S. forces. They always said coalition, because they really want to get the idea across that it's like global. It's like a democratic ideal. You have all these people in the world are all uniting to fight against this radical Islamic terrorism. But I'm pretty sure that Israel didn't have a single soldier as part of any of those military operations, but they were the primary beneficiary of all of them. So
and you don't
give that up, right? If you
don't have to look much further than the 7 countries in 5 years. Again, we know it wasn't 5 years. It's been a lot longer, but 6 are gone. There's only 1 left. And America did all of that. And I remember watching a video on Wesley Clark and that, document or whatever that he was presented with. Okay. And you know who paid for the research behind that study, which resulted, it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Netanyahu, not personally, but the state of Israel, which Netanyahu was in charge of at the time. They are the ones that put together the data and that document, which then, became something circulated amongst our generals and something that our military executed. So that's crazy, man. It's so wild to see, okay, as a Christian, I've grown up Christian, okay? And the Bible prophecy stuff it's always been huge, Yeah, I never anticipated that the end times Bible prophecy stuff would be like something that is self-fulfilled, something that people use prophecy as a checklist to go down and be like, okay, next is this, then this, then this, then this. All right, that's our game plan. This will result in whatever, our Messiah or the Antichrist or the second coming. But the older I've gotten and the more you see things transpiring, it's very difficult to say that this stuff is happening organically and apart from the prophecy side. You know what I mean? And so for me, I'm just like, dude, is this personally, I'm like, is this okay? Is it okay that Christians are supporting the nation with money and with, God, the cows the heifers, the red heifers that they need for the
Yeah,
the
that was from
temple.
Texas.
That was from Texas. That was a Christian evangelical dude from Texas that undertook this breeding program because he's like, hey, they're going to need these for the third temple, and this is going to bring about Jesus quicker. And I'm like, like personally, like, because it's my religion, right? I'm allowed to ask these questions. I'm like, is that okay? Like, are we supposed to partner with the shit they're doing? Is evil. It's treacherous. Like, it's terrible. Are we supposed to partner with that because God says, hey, once these things happen, Jesus will come back? But he comes back because of how evil it is, not because like you're helping him come back. You're aiding in the evil to transpire to bring him back. He doesn't need your help. You know what I mean? He's got his own timing for these things, bro. So I was like, I've been struggling with that idea, if it's like okay or not for Christians to be involved in this stuff. You could believe they're God's chosen people. You could believe he's going to save them in the end. That's fine. But partnering with them in the evil they're doing because you think you're helping Jesus come back faster, I personally believe that that's a sin. Like, I believe that that's evil. You know?
Well, let's take it a step further. It's not just partnering with them, but it's not standing up against it, like the evil.
Exactly.
So it's not just supporting them financially, but like, hey, saying the reality, hey, this is not right. This is not good. We can't just not, be silent.
We'll call out every other religion. We'll call out every other country. We just won't call out the actual sin and evil that's perpetrated by one country and one group of people. But like, what, bro, have you read your Bible? Jesus called them out consistently. Like, that was his mission. Have you read the Old Testament? Yahweh was the biggest anti-Semite, according to, the current definition. All he did was punish them. All he did was chastise them. All he did was send prophets to criticize them, send them into exile, kill them off. He tells Moses, hey, I'm going to kill all of them. I can't stand these people anymore. I'm going to kill all of them and start over with you. And he's like, no, please don't. And he's like, okay, fine. So if we critique sin, somehow I'm not saved. I'm sorry. Well, then I guess like Jesus wasn't saved when he critiqued their sin back then. Anywho, let's not get started down that route.
Can I do something before we get into the next thing? Because someone sent us a video and I want to see if it works. I'm just going to try it. Here, do you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I
I can see it.
Turn it down, Dennis. Turn it down.
מה שרואה עוד, וגם משהו שעדיין משאיר ליבו, אז הייתה מה שהוא במה ידיעתו. הכנראה שהיא מספיק, כאילו שהיום כבר כמה שוד בדין ועדיין ליבו, אבל יש כמה שעות, אבל יש להשתדל גם היום, בבשורות טובות. זה שמחה וטוב ליבו. כדי שחסידים מקפידים שכל ימנו ימית שמחה. בשורות טובות, הצלחה רבה.
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
were you able to read those subtitles, Cato? Or is it too small?
I couldn't read the subtitles, no.
Dennis, do you want to summarize it?
Yeah, basically he was asking for blessings from this rabbi guy, and the rabbi saying, hey, how come it's not moving fast enough? Like the Messiah hasn't come yet. You got to keep moving. You got to move faster. You got to do more. You got to do more. He said, we're doing everything we can. We're trying to haste in the day, the Messiah. So this is exactly what you were talking about. Like they're kind of manufacturing all this stuff because of prophecy.
Yeah.
To me, that's wild. This whole thing.
Do you guys know who that was? Do you guys know who that Rebbe was? Oh, he's an interesting character. I have a video about him on my Instagram. His name is Menachem Schneerson. He was basically the spiritual leader of a Kabbalist, sort of a cult-like Jewish movement called Chabad Lubavitch. And the Lubavitchers, they are very radical, ultra right-wing, ultra orthodox Hasidic sect. that is Kabbalist, and Kabbalist is kind of a mystical form of Judaism. And they, in practice, they operate quite a bit like a mafia. So they have a lot of tentacles that have spread out into sort of like, political apparatuses all over the world. Even Putin has his own personal rabbi, basically assigned to him by Chabad. Yeah, his name is Burel Lazar. You guys can look that up.
No way.
That's crazy.
No way.
Yeah.
Dude, I want my own personal rabbi.
Bro, I would not have expected Putin to even give two craps about what Israel thinks.
Yeah, no, they give big craps about what Israel thinks.
Sure they do.
I mean, their influence is so widespread. I mean, the deeper you go, the more you find. It's just it becomes ridiculous. And
I want to mention the chat a little bit. Thank you to Lynette who sent that video in. Thank you so much. Good to have you, Lynette, with us.
Yeah, you've been missed.
Yes, very much.
And we hope you're doing well.
Yes. Praying for you, girl. Mark says, why do Christians feel like we have to side with Israel no matter what? I like that question.
What do you think, Cato? From and you're not Christian, right?
No.
From your perspective.
Which I'd like to talk about. I want to ask you about that, Cato, at some point tonight. But not right now. Not right now, but I was thinking about that earlier. But yeah, from your perspective, I'm curious about this answer too. Like, why do you think Christians, from your perspective, I think it's really, really cool to hear.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's probably one of, if not the most important questions that the entire Christian community should be asking themselves at this time.
For sure.
So basically, it's pretty much for about 1900 years, Christianity, however you define it, because for most of that time it was like the Catholic Church, and then there was the Protestant Reformation and all that. But however you define Christianity, it would have been basically fundamentally opposed in every way to Judaism for a number of reasons, right? They were pretty much mortal enemies, in particular the Catholic Church. Organized Jewry and the Catholic Church were mortal enemies for over 1,000 years. And then the Protestant Reformation happened, and basically that was started by Martin Luther. And Martin Luther had a bunch of problems with the way that the Catholic Church was run. He famously posted his 95 Theses on the church in Wittenberg. And he essentially started a splitting apart of Christianity into the Protestant and Catholic side. However, what most people don't realize is Martin Luther was possibly the most rabid anti-Semite in Christian history.
It's true.
And you should look up a book by Martin Luther called On the Jews and Their Lies. It's fascinating, but he pulls no punches. He was extremely anti-Jewish. And the reason he was so anti-Jewish was because he spent the bulk of the first half of his career basically trying to recruit Jews into, under redemption under Jesus Christ. He wanted to convert them into Christianity.
Wow.
And he thought, that was basically, so all of his early writing and his early sort of like spiritual work is focused on bringing Jews into the fold, welcoming them as brothers under Christ.
Okay.
In order to do that,
hang on, can I stop you right there? Can I stop you right there? Because someone just mentioned in the chat, like Luther was super anti-Semitic. Yeah, and if you think about that, though, like it's not anti-Semitic. He actually cared for the Jews. If what you're saying is true, like he actually wanted to bring them into the fold of God. He's not trying to be anti-Semitic. And we look at him.
Well, no, I'm not done yet.
Okay.
He took a hard turn.
Can I stop you right there, Dennis?
Yeah, definitely stop me because I don't know what I'm talking about. Go ahead.
He basically, as part of his mission to bring Jews into the fold, he started to interface with them a lot more. He wanted to learn a lot more about Judaism. He started, studying with various rabbis and stuff, and he started to study the Talmud. Now, at that time, the Talmud was basically a banned book. The Catholic Church and other churches also, I'm pretty sure in the Byzantine Empire, they did the same thing. They had tried their hardest to eradicate the Talmud because they considered it to be essentially a satanic book. And Judaism is fundamentally anti-Christian, like at its deepest level, right? So they were trying to wipe it out of existence, but there were many, many secret copies because the Jews were always very accustomed to hiding everything about what they did and what they believed, because they believed in sacrifice and they, vehemently hated Jesus Christ. So, all that stuff. So they never were able to get rid of it. But in trying to bring them into the fold, he started studying a lot more about Judaism. He started studying the Talmud. And at some point, he was able to begin a translation of the Talmud, and he was really shocked at what he found. So in his in his sort of attempt to understand Jews better in order to bring them into the brotherhood under Christ, he realized that these were incredibly diabolical people who were totally irredeemable. And
Wow.
after that, once he really understood what they were all about and what they believed and what they practiced and stuff, and how hardcore they were, and how they were literally willing, they would much rather die than ever become Christians. He started to really understand that there was no way to convert them. And they were already very conspiratorial. And this was way back in the 1540s, I believe, is when he published On the Jews and Their Lives. I believe it was 1543. So he by that time, and this is 500 years ago almost, they were already very conspiratorial. They had a lot, they were always working together sort of behind the scenes to advance the sort of overall Jewish agenda. So at that time, part of the reason he wrote On the Jews and Their Lives was to warn Christian rulers and say, if we allow ourselves to coexist with Jews, we are inevitably going to end up being infiltrated by Jews. We're going to have beliefs that become more Jewish, or we'll end up being controlled by Jews. So there is no solution other than to kick all Jews out. This is the only way forward. This is your warning. I'm telling you, I know more about these people than anybody else, and there's no way to deal with them and still call yourself a Christian and have a Christian society. If you don't kick them out, they're going to take over. And that was over 500 years ago. So he had a very extremist sort of view, which is kicking Jews out of Christian society completely is the only way Christianity will survive. And then as time goes on, especially in like, you really see it in the 1800s, there's a lot of European literature where people talk about different ways to maybe reform Judaism or work together with it, or maybe because Jews had been emancipated after Napoleon in roughly 1800, meaning they were able to take a lot of jobs that they could not previously. And they essentially infiltrated all of the power, like the control vectors, you might call them, in Europe by about the mid 1800s. Very quickly, they poured into media and finance.
It's always the
and
French,
government.
Cato. It's always the French.
Right. Well, so the French in Europe, they were kind of infamous for sort of like opening the door to Jew control of government and finance and stuff.
Wow.
So by the mid to late 1800s, you have a lot from all over Europe. You have, and in many languages, you have a lot of different European scholars and statesmen who are saying, not quite to the extreme that Martin Luther did, but they're saying we really need to do something about the degree to which Jews are taking control of our society and abusing society and having fundamentally anti-Christian views. Because how can we be Christians if people who are fundamentally anti-Christian are taking over our society and making our laws and holding all of our debts and in a power position over our rulers and so on, right? It would become impossible. But there was still kind of a bit of moderation to that. There's still writers who were saying like, we don't need to kick Jews out completely, but we need to heavily restrict them. And then eventually, of course, Hitler comes about, and his idea initially was not to genocide. That's a myth. His idea, the whole agenda of the Third Reich initially was to kick them out, was to deport them. So over the course of almost 500 years, well, at that time it would have been 400 years, you kind of come full circle. From what Martin Luther said, the most extreme thing, then it comes kind of down to a more moderate, sort of more Christian, more people thinking like, well, we want to be Christians, so we want to be benevolent, we want to be welcoming, but we also want to protect our faith. So what do we do? And then it comes all the way full circle back to, no, we just got to get them out. That's the only way forward. We got to kick them out. And so there's, this is a very, like I said, it's ancient. I mean, even the Romans were struggling. There were Roman writers. And I'm not talking about the Jews in Judea. There was a sizable Roman Jewish population in Rome. And what do you think they did there? They used their money to infiltrate government. They were influencing, they were insinuating themselves into power and buying off politicians and stuff like that. And there's even ancient Romans who wrote about how frustrating it was that Jews operated that way and how they sort of meddled into politics, in a way that was very disruptive. So it's always been the same problem. And it still is the same problem to this very day, now that, so many Americans are waking up to it. But basically, for all that history, to come all the way back to the question, you have Christians being fundamentally in opposition to Jews. Like they're totally incompatible with each other. And pretty much all Christians understood this, like since the very earliest days, since even Jesus himself, because in many times in scripture, he admonishes them as, the synagogue of Satan and so on.
Right.
From literally Jesus all the way up until around 1900, Christians are very aware that their ultimate enemy is Jews. Also, Islam is kind of an enemy, but that sort of comes later, and there's sort of rises and falls. but they coexist. Christians coexist with Jews, and they're always having problems with Jews. That's why they were expelled over 1,000 times. It's more like about 1,030, 1,040 that they were kicked out of Christian communities.
Wow.
Then you in America, you have a new interpretation of the Bible that comes out called the Scofield Bible, and you have very big money from Europe that starts infiltrating the Christian churches. Most notably, the sort of big person who was pushing this movement, this sort of a new look at Judaism, you could call it, was the pastor Darby. I forget his first name, but his last name was Darby, and he's kind of the father of the dispensationalist movement. And that was when you start seeing, and then there were a number of what today we'd call them influencers, but back then they're really notable preachers or authors or writers of different kinds. But they were basically starting to get paid to promote the idea of Israel as like a spiritual community. Now, that time Israel did not exist as a nation, but Israel did exist as a term because they always refer to sort of like the collective Jews of the world as Israel. So by saying Israel, they were more and more implying that they meant Jews, like international Jewry. And then, so Americans, the nation of Israel does not exist at this time, but Americans start to get a more positive idea of Jews and their role in fulfilling sort of spiritual prophecy. And so that becomes very influential in the American Christian movement. So now you have, within like 20 or 30 years, you have a lot of Americans who are very sympathetic and almost even putting Jews on a pedestal. A lot of people don't know this, but like the Franklin D. Roosevelt administration was very heavily, almost entirely Jewish. He had like 70% Jews in his cabinet, and all of his appointees and whatever is basically Jewish. And of course, that was during World War II, right? And then Jews also held most of the chief positions in the UK and also in the Soviet Union. So these are all the sort of main sides of what we call the Allies. They're basically just Jew controlled, right? So by that time, you already have enough basically consent among the American populace that there's a lot of Jews in very powerful positions, but we're okay with that because we're okay with Jews. But that was already in defiance of 1,900 years of continuous antagonism with Jews. And then fast forward after World War II, of course, you have the Holocaust, which I have my own whole views about that, but that happens. Then World War II ends, and now there's like an urgent need to establish a Jewish state because they need somewhere to put them all. Because they're so totally destabilized and they're all over Europe, and there was trying to escape Europe and so on. So that's when the Jewish state comes around. And now, what did they very cleverly name the Jewish state? They call it Israel. Why? Because people already had it programmed into them this very positive view of the idea of Israel. So that's one of the most genius like marketing moves in the history of geopolitics, is naming the Jewish state Israel, because now they already know that it's sort of pre-approved by Christianity, because Christians had already been programmed for generations by that time to have a positive view of Israel. And whenever Christians open their Bible, they're going to read their Bible and find mentions of Israel. And obviously, it's not the same Israel in 1948 as it was thousands of years ago, but most people aren't going to think that far. They're just going to read the Bible and say, oh, it says here Israel, so that must be the nation of Israel. And now, here we are, where you have like millions of Christians who are donating, their social security checks to Israel because they think it's, what it's in the Bible. And in reality, it's a genocidal ethno state run by a bunch of maniacs. But, good branding works really well.
Dude, so that, ladies and gentlemen, is the non-Christian perspective, like from an outsider's perspective, right? Because we grew up thinking like, oh, Israel's Israel. Look, they're called Israel, right? And the Bible calls them Israel. Same. But what have you seen or have you listened to Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem? The podcast Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem?
No.
It's a 6-part series. It's about 30 hours long. It's the most robust. I recommend it to everybody. It's not the guy that does it, Daryl Cooper. You know Daryl Cooper? Okay.
No.
This is his. No? Dude, he's been on Tucker. He's blowing up. I just recommend it to everybody. I don't think he was Christian when he did this. There's no bias. There's no pro-Palestine, pro-Israel. There's nothing. It's just a historic account. Just history. 30 hours of documented history. From World War I to World War II and the history of Israel and Palestine. That's it. It's the most interesting thing you'll ever hear. We, even as Christians, like we were or are so ignorant about the history involved in this stuff. It's not as simple as, oh, that's their land. God promised it to them, and one day they'll have it again.
No.
Maybe, but
Mhm.
along the way, to make that promise come true, the freaking atrocities that had to be committed, you know,
Right.
is something that you just as a Christian cannot support, cannot get behind, cannot praise. You have to call it out. Even if the people of Israel, even if you still think they're God's chosen people, because that's what the Bible says, right? Even if you think they're God's chosen people, that doesn't mean you have to support what they do. Like, it's
Right.
God's own business what he does with them, whether he saves them or not, or, you know, replaces them. I don't know, whatever. There's a bunch of theories out there in theology and in Christianity.
Right.
But
Right.
there's nothing wrong with calling out atrocities, bro. There's nothing wrong with looking at the history of these things and being like, well, that wasn't good, and that's not good, and that's not good. And here we are today as a result of all these not good things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And from like, and I've heard this before, that the kind of modern stuff with Israel started with Darby and the Schofield Study Bible. I've heard both sides though. Not so much why that's not true. I've heard people say that it's not true. Okay, that dispensationalism didn't really start with Darby and Schofield. I haven't like really gotten into it to see why that's
Mm.
not true. I have heard
Right.
way more people say what you just laid out, that hey, that's kind of when it flourished, and that's when support for Israel like took off, was in the late 1800s or early 1900s with with
Right.
the Schofield Study Bible and Darby. Do you know what's like the best resource for people if they want to look at it just objectively, just from a historic point of view, about that time frame and about the influences that Darby and Schofield Study Bible had? Do you have like a resource that we could look into really?
No, that portion, I wish I did. I can definitely give like specific resources about a lot of stuff, but I don't have one on that specifically. I've kind of put that together just with a lot of different parts of other books and various articles I've read and stuff.
Because that is,
Um,
dude, online, like that is a common, I don't know if trope's the
yeah,
right word, you know, but that is a common idea online, is that
yeah,
this stuff
right,
began
right,
with, but then again, I haven't looked into it too much. I've heard other people be like, no,
yeah,
that's not true. So that's something to look into, you know, because that makes a huge difference. That makes a huge freaking difference. Because if historically Christianity as a whole, even the Protestant movement, man, which we're a part of, you know, we're not Catholic, we're not Orthodox, we're evangelical. If even the Protestant movement up until 120 years ago was anti jewelry or whatever you call it, I don't know what you call it.
right,
And then suddenly it flips because of an interpretation. That's a big deal. You know what I
yeah,
mean? That's a really big deal. Because now we're disconnected with 2,000 years of church like history and belief. And we just believe a
yeah, very much.
100-year-old tradition, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that's something important to kind of back out and look at the big picture, because let's say, for example, like you mentioned, that some people are saying it's not true that the Schofield sort of Darby movement, you know, for lack of a better word, maybe that's not where it started. Maybe that wasn't the beginning of the influence, but whatever it is, technically, if we back out and take the big picture view, we know that there's abundant evidence that Christianity was fundamentally anti-Jewish. It perceived Jews to be enemies,
sure,
to be
sure.
satanic, to be anti-Christian, to violate, you know, a lot of Christian law and Christian morals and values in really like extreme ways. And that had basically always been the case since the founding of Christianity. And you can track that all the way up to around roughly 1900 in America, not in Europe,
Mm,
because Europe already had this very, very long-standing
I see.
antagonism toward Jews. That happened in America. Why? Because America's a new country, because it's a very diverse country, so you don't have as much, you know, solidified views here. And this was the birth of, you know, after World War I was basically the birthplace of propaganda. And then you start getting radio advertisements, you start getting, you know, mass media and stuff. So
Mm,
it was almost a testing grounds. It was like an optimal sort of new blank slate where they could craft a new narrative. Doing that would have been very difficult, possibly impossible, more than likely impossible, to sort of reprogram Europe to believe that Jews are good all of a sudden after thousands of years and very,
Dude.
very deeply rooted traditions, but not
Very
just
true.
theological traditions, but like social and cultural traditions. To believe that Jews are this sort of like infiltrating subversive force. In America, they could reprogram people to believe that. In Europe, they basically had to destroy it and
Wow.
then start over. And you know, you get the world wars, which happened
Dude, that's a really good point, because even if you can't pinpoint definitively, like, okay, it started
Right.
with Schofield and Darby. Haha, we got you. Like, even though you can't pinpoint that, what you can look
Right.
at is the change in like attitude and perspective in the West, starting at that specific time frame in history.
Yeah, exactly.
And what a coinker-dinker, that's also the time frame Darby and Schofield were popping. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's,
Yeah.
dude, that's fascinating that it was easier to do here, because we're just at that point, we're just a hodgepodge of like random people from all over the place. And everybody's trying to
Right.
find themselves, put together who they are as a society, as a culture, as families, like from all over the place. Right. But Europe,
Right.
dude, you're not changing minds and attitudes and, like you said, cultures in freaking Europe. Those things are dyed in the wool because they have hundreds and thousands of years of history that you just
Right.
don't flip a switch and change overnight. Even being Romanian, bro, we still hate the Hungarians to this day. Okay,
I don't hate any Hungarians, man. Don't say we.
Hey, you don't know you hate them, but wait till I finish.
I don't know any Hungarians.
You keep stopping people in the middle of sentences. I'm just kidding. Hey, the reason they still hate them is because of the history that Romania and Hungary have about like wars and killings and rapings and pillagings. But the last time that happened was like 200 years ago. But if you still go to Romania today, people in their 20s are like, they'll use Hungarian as an insult. They'll be like, you freaking Hungarian. You know what I mean? So that would be hard to undo culturally.
Yeah.
Whereas here, where everything's
Exactly.
kind of fresh, if you could get in early on the ground floor of culture, you could kind of wire it in the direction you want it to go, you know? And then what a coinker-dinker, that leads to World War II, where, like you said, a bunch of Jewish people were in positions of influence in government in Western countries. And then they're the ones that put together the Balfour Declaration and allow, well, this was after World War I. They allow Palestine and Israel, the greater Israel, whatever, for Jews to start moving over there in droves. And the Arabs were just like, hey, what's going on? I thought you guys said like 5,000 people were coming and there's 200,000 people here or whatever. So anyway, a lot of history to it. And for like our Christian audience, dude, myself included until recently, who still like support Israel, that's okay. You can support what you think the Bible says about them and still call out sin, right? It's not like if we call out Muslim beheadings, does that mean like I hate Muslim people? I might not like their religion. I might think their religion's evil, right? I might hate their religion. That doesn't mean I hate the person. That doesn't make me, like, calling out beheadings doesn't make me a Islamophobe. You know what I'm saying? Whereas if I call out sins that are ingrained in the Jewish religion, in their Talmud, okay, that suddenly makes me like anti-Semitic. No, I could still love that dude and like hate his sin, right? That's a common like Christian understanding. And if you start there as a Christian, I think that's a good place to be. I think it's a safe place to be. You're treating all sin equally. You're not giving people a pass just because you think in the future God's going to do a work with these people. He might. That's his business. Sorry.
I think it's more than that, though. I think it's also, the verse that says that if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed and things like that. If you hate
it doesn't.
Israel,
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It says
I know
those who
I'm sure
bless
that's it.
Abraham will be blessed. So now we've taken that verse, changed the word Abraham to mean the nation of Israel. I don't think
say Israel.
Bro, pull it up. Okay, Ted Cruz. Hey,
I believe Ted Cruz, Teddy.
Pull it up.
I don't like Teddy. He
Cato,
must be Hungarian.
While he pulls that up, man, have you noticed? Yeah, he must be. Teddy Cruz, Christian. I mean, speaking of people that changed their names, Benjamin Netanyahu's name wasn't Netanyahu. His dad changed their name when they moved from Poland.
Yeah, it's Milikowski.
It's Milikowski.
Yeah, it's Milikowski. That's the same last name of the Javier Milei, who's the president of Argentina. His family name is Milikowski too, incidentally.
No way.
Wait, say that again.
Yeah.
Say that again.
The president that everyone loves, because he's the president that everyone loves now. He's kind of like a reformer president because he's kind of right wing, kind of libertarian, kind of edgy and cool. His name's Javier Milei. He's the president of Argentina, the new president. He's a Jew, and his last name is not Milei, it's Mileikowski.
No way.
Mileikowski is the exact same last name as Benjamin Netanyahu. I believe they're family.
Dude,
Oh my
that's
God.
crazy. Oh
Dude,
my God.
I did not know that. I know I've seen the pictures of him just like dying at the Wailing Wall, you know, but I did not know that he's got that close of a tie. Okay, so now we've got the right-wing movement in Argentina that's like heavily pro-Israel. You have the right-wing movement here that's heavily pro-Israel.
Right.
Then
Heavily pro-Israel.
and are all right-wing movements like globally pro-Israel?
I would not make that claim.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
I don't think the Hungarian right-wing movement is pro-Israel. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
it's not. But you know, one of the things that's so brilliant about international Jewry, even though that's obviously very loosely defined, is, like I said earlier, they're so good at controlling their opposition. It is something that they're very, very adept at, because they know, I mean, if you and your tribe had been kicked out of various communities, as small as a tiny city state and as large as an entire empire, for thousands of years, you've been kicked out over 1,000 times. At that point, you have enough data to say, okay, being what we are and doing what we do, at some point, these people are going to get pissed off and kick us out. So how do we prevent that? And the best way to prevent that, if you know you're going to piss them off, is allow them to be pissed off, but control that pissed off movement so it doesn't amount to anything. You don't want it to turn into a political movement that starts saying the way that we can preserve our civilization or our religion or whatever is by kicking out Jews. They don't want to get to that point. So to create their own opposition and allow it to flourish, but make sure it just doesn't accomplish anything, is one of those brilliant things they do, and they do that, you know, pretty consistently. So being on both sides, you know, that's what, you know, a lot of times people say, oh, you know, Jews are so exceptional, they're so smart, and they're such great leaders because they always kind of make their way into the chief positions of power.
I respect it.
In both sides. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's both sides of issues that they also create. So maybe there's a reason for that, you know.
Do you think that so like you're saying they got kicked out of all these, if you include cities and little towns and whatever, like over 1,000, right?
Right.
Was it just this like hatred because of who they are, or was it because of the things they would do?
Oh no, actually, something that I find really interesting is, and I have a document that it's kind of been circulated around the internet, but it's also always getting banned, and I was able to get a hold of it. It is basically a list of all of those incidents. So there's over 1,000 entries on it, and most of them, well, I shouldn't say most, probably roughly half of them have a reason attributed. So some of them, it just says Jews expelled. 1546, you know, somewhere in Italy, whatever, Jews expelled. But in a number of them, it will have a sentence or a paragraph saying exactly why they were expelled.
Wow.
So something I wanted to really have a deep understanding of is why they're always getting expelled, because it's certainly not because of these ridiculous anti-Semitic characters like, oh, they have, you know, hook noses and curly hair, so we're going to kick them out. Like, that's stupid.
Is it just racism, or is it like the result of something they're doing? You know what I mean?
I'll tell you, it gets real interesting. So I think at no point in history was it an easy decision kicking out Jews, because Jews are always in power positions because they almost have like a formula to get into power positions. So it's never, for no ruler, like I said, from a small city-state ruler to a whole empire, it's never an easy decision for any political community to kick out Jews. It's always something that's going to be very controversial and very problematic and probably have blowback. So because of that, they need to do it only when it's like they're at an extreme position where there's nothing else they can do.
Existential.
So there are reasons, and the reasons are fascinating. So I went through all of them, and it's like I said, out of over 1,000, it's 400 or 500 that have reasons attributed to them. I went through them line by line, and I took down and I made categories, and there's only 8 categories. And the last 3 are, you know, they're so uncommon that they don't even hardly exist. A lot of people think that Jews were always getting kicked out because of usury, because they were violating the Christian usury laws. And it is true that you know, throughout all of history, they've been moneylenders, but that's not the reason that is in the historical record. The main reasons that they get kicked out throughout history is, believe it or not, are you guys ready for this? These are the top two reasons. One is inciting revolution, and the other is performing blood sacrifice. Those are the
Wow.
top two reasons. They're basically tied. I believe both of them were 47 incidents, you know, out of that.
Wow.
So the blood sacrifice thing, you know, it wasn't on chickens, it was on people, and the people were Christians. So if you study that now, it's called blood
No
libel. And if
way.
you look up blood libel, you're going to find an avalanche of, you know, Google articles and stuff saying this is all an anti-Semitic hoax, it's all a forgery, it's all, you know, yada yada. But I tend to believe that hundreds or thousands of years of very consistent historical accounts from different people in different political communities, in different religions, different languages, different cultures, different parts of the world, all saying the same thing is probably more reliable than a few articles I find on Google today, right? So the blood sacrifice thing was something where at that point, if there was a scandal where like a little kid went missing, and then everybody was looking for the kid and they found basically evidence that said they ended up at some Jewish ritual where they sacrificed the kid, then that would cause them to say, okay, you know, we can't really allow Jews to continue existing in our community. They break a lot of Christian laws, they hate Jesus, they are generally antagonistic towards Christians because Jews historically hate Christians with a burning passion. But now we actually have to kick them out. Like, we have no choice. So like I said, there's different reasons, but the top two were inciting revolution and blood sacrifice. And what's real interesting is you have, so around the roughly 1200s is when the Kabbalah movement started, which is a mystical form of Judaism. It is what people would basically call demonology for the most part. It's very weird and really difficult to explain, but there is a lot of demonology wrapped up in Kabbalah. Before that is when they were always inciting revolution and doing things like Jews frequently refused to pay taxes. So they refused to pay taxes because they basically wouldn't recognize the political community's authority. They'd be like, well, this is not a nation. You have no authority over us. We only answer to God and whatever. So for different reasons, they had that sort of, you know, rebelliousness to them. And in their refusal to follow Christian laws, they were getting kicked out. After Kabbalah, after roughly, let's call it somewhere in the range of like 1200s to 1400s, after Kabbalah becomes a whole sort of well-developed discipline, they don't revolt anymore. Jews are done revolting. That's also around the time the Talmud was published. So actually, no, I take that back. The Talmud was published centuries before, but it was like suppressed, and then it started to rise back up again in Europe in around that same time frame. So after that, they kind of start to go underground because they're not revolting anymore. They're not engaging in like open political revolt, which is like what they did in the Bible. They start to kind of go underground, but that's when you start to see a big increase in why they're kicked out, and why they're kicked out is blood sacrifice. So there's like this sort of transition point in the history of why they get kicked out. Around between the 12s and 1400s, it goes from a high of revolting against, you know, whatever Christian authority they lived under. They're always revolting and spying and engaging in treason and you know, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of sort of political, you know, just causing political mayhem in general, different ways. They stop that and it goes down, and then it comes back up. But when it comes back up, the, you know, Jewish expulsions, it's mainly as a result of child sacrifice. So there's like
Wow.
a transition period there where they're not overtly challenging authority, but they start basically performing black magic. And that's why you see this transition, and you can actually graph it. One of the things I want to do, I have a chart where I, you know, sort of tallied up the number of incidents and the percentage of these incidents of why they got kicked out. I can probably find it for you guys, but I wanted to plot it on a time graph. So on a time graph, like I said, there's 8 reasons, but there's really, the last 3 are so minor, we could drop them off and it wouldn't make that big of a difference. Maybe mention them in a footnote. So we take 5, we could take 5 colors and plot them on a graph, and then you'd see kind of cluster formations based on those colors, and you'd see that the cluster that is closer to like early Middle Ages would be because of revolt and you know, against the government, against the Christian governments, and after that it'd be because of blood sacrifice primarily.
I know that they are, or at least partially responsible for like communism. Okay. even like Karl Marx.
Basically entirely responsible.
Okay, entirely responsible.
Pretty much entirely responsible.
So even Karl Marx, I remember looking it up a while ago. His his name was Karl Mordecai, and then he changed his name to Karl Marx. His dad was a rabbi. His dad was a freaking
his
rabbi.
family was rabbis going back like 6 generations.
Yeah, and then he becomes like the freaking patriarch of communism to some degree. But like, is that the kind of revolutionary stuff you're talking about?
Yeah.
Like so a more recent example would be like a communist revolution. But what about before?
Yeah,
What kind of revolution?
there wasn't communism there wasn't communism in the Middle Ages, let's say, but it was always something where they're always fundamentally opposed to being ruled by Christians. This is something they've never been okay with. At any point in history, they're not okay with living under a Christian government.
Same thing with communism.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So this is kind of like around the time that communism was rising, especially if you look into, there's a document called, it's often called a forgery, but I believe it is authenticated. But it's called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, where they talk very extensively about the sort of revolution that they're going to have against Christian governments. They're going to overthrow them. They're going to collapse them. They're going to erode them. And at some point, Judaism will be able to rise because all the Christian empires will have fallen. Well, what's real interesting is that came out, it was supposedly written in like the 1880s, but it was actually revealed, it was leaked in 1905. That's the first time it was published, and it was published in Russia. Russia at the time was under the Tsars. It was very Christian. The Tsars were basically a Christian empire, right? Very, very Christian. So at the time it was published, but then it was kind of suppressed because Jews were very, very influential in the publishing industry. They had most of the control of publishing in Europe, but it made its way around enough that people started hearing about it. Well, at some point, I believe in around 1912, maybe a little later, it popped up in America. However, in America, they published it it came out as like a 3-part series in a paper, I believe in Michigan. But when they published it, they took out all the Jewish references and they replaced them with communist. So that's really, and specifically Bolshevik. So basically, what's really fascinating is they pretty much edited the whole thing to take out the identity of the group that was infiltrating and subverting and destroying Christian society, and inserted a whole other identity of a different group that wasn't considered to be Jewish, but it still made sense because it still described communism perfectly well, to the point where a lot of people in America, a lot of people's idea of what the communist agenda was shaped by that document, because they thought it was written by communists and they didn't realize it was written by Jews, right? So there's a tremendous amount of overlap, because a fundamental agenda of early communism is obviously, all communism is sort of fundamentally intertwined with atheism, but specifically the Bolsheviks, who were like the Russian revolutionaries, they were extremely anti-Christian, and they were about 85% Jewish, which is that's too big of a correlation to ignore.
And during the Bolshevik Revolution, I think something like 60 million Christians were massacred. So what a coincidence that 85% of the Bolsheviks are like Christian hating Jews, and 85 million Christians get massacred during that single moment in history. So again, it just goes back to
like
that war, to that animosity.
Roughly 85%, give or take, of the Bolshevik revolutionaries were Jews, but primarily where they were very highly concentrated almost entirely was in organizational and leadership positions, and also managing the gulags and also the intelligence services, like the secret police. They called them the Cheka. So all of those institutions were where Jews really concentrated, and lo and behold, that's where they had the most authority to torment or kill Christians, basically, because Russia was considered to be a very devoutly Christian empire. So they weren't so much the sort of soldiers, the sort of frontline, people actually doing the hard work. They were more in positions where they could either lead movements and have sort of a political control over it, or hands-on doing the sort of the torture and the investigations and the questioning and all that kind of stuff, or managing the actual gulags, which was by far the most comprehensive prison camp system in history, far bigger than anything Germany ever did during World War II, by an enormous fact, by like 10 times bigger or something like that.
Dude, the history's fascinating, man. The history's absolutely fascinating. Dennis, do we have anything in the chat?
Yeah.
It's almost the opposite of everything we've learned.
Yeah, someone wants to send. I told him to send the information, but an article refuting that document that you were talking about, Cato.
Which one? The Zionist thing?
Yeah. So they're going to send it.
Yeah, that's most of what you'll find. Almost everything you'll find says it's a hoax.
Okay. Well, I'll see what I'm curious. And then someone asked, do you think that they're literally behind all the conspiracy theories in the U.S.?
I mean, definitely not all, because there's a lot of conspiracy theories, and
I think they're behind all of them.
Dennis,
they're
this
certainly
hat?
behind a lot, right? I would say they're behind pretty much all of the effective ones.
That's a very good point. Anything that is actually that makes a difference is probably somewhere down the line, inspired by somebody from that camp.
Yeah, right.
Damn.
Like people think we never go to the moon, right? That's a big conspiracy theory, is that we never went to the moon, and
we never.
I'm pretty doubtful about that. I mean, for sure, maybe we went, but everything about the narrative is total BS.
We didn't go.
And the fact that we lost the ability to go back because they accidentally deleted the tapes that was said by an actual NASA spokesman. Like, it's so stupid. But like, it doesn't really make a difference in the world of like politics and finance and actual power over people, whether they went to the moon or not. Is that a Jewish conspiracy theory? I doubt it. Why would they waste their time with that? But something like that actually will allow them to be in a position of power. So do Jews basically control all of Hollywood? Yes. Do they basically control all of the internet, especially things like search and AI? Yes. Do they basically control all of the porn industry? Yes, they do. Do they control most international trafficking, especially human trafficking, also organ trafficking? Yes, they do. And you can just keep going on down the list where almost everything that's really widely organized and extremely profitable and really bad for civilization, especially Christian civilization, you're going to find a very high concentration of Jews in those things, and they get away with it because they also are very powerful politically. Dude,
I'll give you an example. So I was trying to make a thumbnail for the YouTube video, and I actually just typed into Google, and then I wanted to do an image search to see if there's anything out there I could use. I typed in Israel summoning the Antichrist. Okay. Because that's where I want this conversation to go. And you know how now Google integrates AI in the top of their search results, right? Bro, this is what it says.
Yeah.
Hey, the belief that Jewish people are summoning the Antichrist is a dangerous and anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that has no basis in Judaism.
Yeah.
The Antichrist is a concept from Christian theology, not Jewish belief. The Antichrist is not a Jewish concept. Judaism does not believe in the Antichrist. The idea is a Christian interpretation of end times events. Since Jews do not believe in Jesus as the Christ, the notion of Antichrist is completely foreign to Jewish theology.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with all that.
For sure. Except for that, the belief that Jewish people are summoning the Antichrist is a dangerous and Semitic conspiracy theory. No, it's not. It's actually
so they're not summoning the Antichrist.
It's what
because they don't have an Antichrist. They're summoning their Messiah, their Mashiach. They call him Mashiach.
That's fine. That's what they call him. We call him the Antichrist. So just follow the train of thought here. Okay. Google's AI just said that if you believe the Jews are bringing about the Antichrist, which they call their Mashiach, their Messiah, okay? If you believe they're bringing about that character, which Christians have historically believed will be the Antichrist, that is a dangerous anti-Semitic belief. So Christian dispensationals, evangelical dispensationals today, believe that their Mashiach will be the Antichrist. You, according to AI, are a dangerous anti-Semite, even though you believe that they're God's chosen people and donate to their temple and breed cows for them. You're a dangerous anti-Semite, according to AI. Wow. Sorry, you can't have it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. There's just no winning, bro. There's no winning.
Wow.
It's wild. And dude,
they control information, they control knowledge, most of it. So.
And Dennis, we did on our hang last time, we had an interesting image generation little fiasco when we were trying to create a Pikachu. Okay. So like a Pikachu Jew, like we were trying to create this. It was a joke, right? It would not do it. But if you ask it to create a blend of Pikachu and Christian, for doesn't say anything. It just puts it out. If you ask it for Islam Pikachu,
Yeah, no problem.
doesn't no
Yeah.
for Islam Pikachu wouldn't do it. Just Christian, and then we had to adjust like the words and mess with it a little bit, and then it did what we wanted.
No, for Islam, I thought it did do it. I think it did do it right away.
I don't know. I got to go back and
remember.
watch it.
Yeah,
it was
I think it did do it right.
hilarious.
It's for the
It was
Jew one, you couldn't.
freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
But dude, here's what's interesting, Cato. So, okay, the Jews are intentionally, even like the video Lynette sent us, Netanyahu tells that rabbi, we're trying. The rabbi's like, hey, the Mashiach's not here. This is going too slow. And Netanyahu says, we're trying, right? There's another quote that he had this last August, so just a month ago. He said that he's on a historic and spiritual mission to fulfill something called Greater Israel, and that's in terms of the expansion stuff you were talking about earlier. So even Netanyahu now is acknowledging that what they're doing, it's not just political. Don't give me this crap about like, oh, Hezbollah attacked
it's
them.
biblical.
Hezbollah attacked them.
Everything is framed in biblical for them.
They're defending themselves, and this is just political. No, it's not. They are admitting, Netanyahu is admitting that he's on a spiritual mission, okay? And through the things that he is doing and orchestrating, they want their Messiah to come, okay? Even in terms of like the third temple, the reason they're building that is because they think their Messiah will come as a result as well. So there's like a checklist of things that prophetically have to happen before their Messiah comes. And do you know what they think will happen when their Messiah comes on the scene? He's going to kill all
I'm pretty
non-Jews.
sure he's like a world conqueror that's going to eradicate all of their enemies, and then they will be sort of like presiding over whoever's left.
He will kill all non-Jews, okay? And then the Jews will rule the world, and they will specifically gain the world's wealth, you know, as if the Messiah really cares about like money, I guess.
Well, I don't think in the prophecies he kills all non-Jews, because they have to have slaves. So there has to be some non-Jews. I'm pretty sure in the prophecies he kills all Christians.
Dennis,
but there has to be people left over to serve like the Jewish agenda, because a big part of what they believe, their fanatical beliefs, is that they're going to end up having all these slaves, basically.
If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. All right, this is TikTok, like, or Instagram theology or history, or I don't know what you want to call it. If I'm not mistaken, he thinks they all die, and then like some are brought back to be slaves. But I could be totally wrong. Okay, I could be connecting dots that are wrong.
Well, there's also there's a wide disparity in how they interpret things and stuff like that. Like that's like, I mean, even like Judaism is not monolithic, you know, like the rabbis argue with each other and debate each other and disagree with each other all the time.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is a lot of people, if I say something that I say, people will say, oh, that's not true. You're making up lies because only some Jews believe that. Most Jews don't believe that. Most Jews don't believe that at all. But the thing is, if you really look at like sort of like different Jewish beliefs, they do disagree, but they still all hate Christians, and they still all want to be in charge, and they still all are behind a lot of things that are bad for society. They have a particular hatred for Christians, but they also hate Muslims quite a bit as well. So it's like they might disagree on how they go about it. They might disagree on sort of like some of the particulars, but none of them are just there, you know, they love and respect and want to live in harmony with Christians. That's not a thing at all.
Yeah. Dennis, did you find what they think their Messiah will do when he arrives?
The problem is in chat, it's totally Jewish. I mean, they're saying the role of the Messiah is to bring peace all over the world, that all nations will come to know God, this Messiah. So it's all peace.
There will be peace after everyone's eradicated.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably what it means by the nations will know God. It's going to be the leftovers who are.
Yeah, I mean, according to chat, again, it says, if in Jewish prophecy, the Messiah brings world peace and leads all people to the knowledge of God, he does not kill or destroy all non-Jewish people.
Wow. Okay.
Except for Hungarians. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
That's like what you guys are doing. This is why I'm really passionate about doing what I do, because there's a very common sort of trend ever since search, right? I would say this really began with Google search, because Google search was the best algorithm out there. Before that, search was sort of wonky. But since that time, it's become authoritative to anytime you want to know something, you run to the internet. So if there's any two people disagreeing or debating anything, they run to the internet. Everybody used to run to Google, and they just say, Google it. Now everyone runs to ChatGPT.
Mhm.
But when you look at the powers behind, obviously the CEO of ChatGPT is Jewish. Obviously the CEO of Google is also Jewish. And then look deeper, the CEOs of pretty much all of these big data harvesting and social engineering companies are all Jewish. So what kind of narrative do you think you're going to get? Obviously you're going to hear what they want you to hear. So I don't, like, for me, if it comes up in Google, and I've used ChatGPT a little bit, it's really, really good at some things. But if you ask difficult,
That's true.
controversial questions like this, it's
That's
just
true.
going to tell you what they want you to hear.
Yeah,
So that's why I really feel like the work that I do, it's not really that appreciated by most people or that interesting because I like go too deep. But I believe it's going to become increasingly important because more and more people are going to, there's going to be sort of like a convergence of all knowledge because everyone's going to go to the same sources. And
Yeah.
those sources are going to be controlled by the exact same people who are being criticized. But then what is being ignored is this thousands of years of history where you have a whole different narrative that's radically different from anything that's being spit out in a little blurb on, very convenient modern day software. And that's because that very convenient modern day software that spits out these little blurbs is controlled by them. Of course it is, because they
Dang.
always want to control the narrative mostly about themselves. So that's why I keep doing what I do, even though it's like very discouraging and it's a lot of work and it doesn't, it's not profitable or anything. I just feel like it's going to become increasingly important because I feel like the vast history of the world is kind of being, if not eradicated, it's just sort of being blended into this whole blob where nobody wants to read it and go deep. They just
Right.
want to read an overview, and the overview is going to be written by ChatGPT, and it's obviously going to be what the modern narrative is, what's acceptable according to the modern narrative, which may as well be what's acceptable to Jews. It's the same thing.
Dude, and it's true because like ChatGPT, these large language models, they just scrape the internet. So if the
Right.
information was already being controlled, they're just fed.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
controlled squared information. You know what I mean? It's like secondhand, tertiary information that's already been manipulated.
Right.
So that's a
Yeah. Then
really good, that's a really good point.
increasingly, a lot more, more and more, there's going to be a lot of published work online, published sort of, articles and blogs and stuff that is written by AI, and then that's going to fold into the large language model. So increasingly AI will be
Dang.
consuming what it has already created and sort of like recycling the same thing as already created as authentic old
Wow.
knowledge, written by thousands of years of humans using their brains, just going to get crowded out.
Dang, man. That's so
That's a good point.
genius. That's so genius to release these tools and make them the standard, instead
Right.
of having to go to libraries and like find books from the 1500s, from the 1800s, from
Yeah, and
the
ultimately it's our fault, right? I call these consent-based scams because almost everything is a consent-based scam. They do very,
Yeah.
very little that requires force. They usually just make things so easy for us that they're sort of irresistible, and then we start
yeah.
using them, and before long we're being controlled
Yep.
because it's harder to say, okay, I want real answers and I don't trust the Jewish controlled internet. So I'm going to have to dig up books, buy books, look at scans of books hundreds of years old, in some cases in other languages. Now I need to find translated versions. I had trouble finding one document I really wanted to read. So I went through and, page by page, I took that, it was in German, and I dropped it into, incidentally, Google's Translate. And then I translated it and did that page by page. And I'm not done yet, but it's a really fascinating book that I'm working on. But it's about Jewish, business practices, basically. And so, you have all this stuff that it's just not making its way into the sort of world of modern knowledge, because modern knowledge is what is acceptable to the mainstream. And if maybe Jews don't control all of the mainstream, I don't think it'd be accurate to say that, but they're certainly in the chief power positions where they can definitely say that's not allowed. Like, sure, you can say a lot of stuff, but that's not allowed. You can't go there. And one of the only things you're going to find that's widely censored all over the world is anything bad about Jews. I mean,
Right.
that's even in like Asian countries where they don't even
Well,
speak English.
bro,
One thing I find fascinating is basically everybody in the entire world, regardless of language, knows that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust, where they have no idea how many other people were killed in other countries and other genocides or at other points in time in World War II. But everyone knows that 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust because it's branded so well and because that figure has been pummeled into everyone's brain in every education system in the entire world. Interestingly, even China, they even teach that in China, which I find, quite ironic. So,
Wow.
so when they control that, and it wasn't 6 million, by the way, it wasn't even anywhere close to that, but that's a whole other thing. But when they just sort of pound this in and they make it so that it becomes accepted as fact, and then you have a bunch of people who are scholars or authors or PhDs or lecturers or statisticians or whatever who keep regurgitating the same lie until it becomes truth, then anything that sort of like goes against that is just almost purged from the record. It's not actually purged because you can still find it, but it's too hard and everybody wants things fast. So if you go to ChatGPT and you type it in and boom, you have an answer right there, then you're gonna be like, oh, well, this says what that guy Cato said is full of shit and he's a lying and he's a liar and he's an anti-Semite.
Right.
Well, it's not that simple because I've done a lot of really deep research stuff that's
Right.
not making it into this modern thing and there's no agenda to it, right? So that's why I feel like sometimes I just get overwhelmed with this shit and I just want to dump it because it's like, it's very mentally distressing studying all this stuff because you realize that these are not only really diabolical people with really crazy beliefs that are essentially going to create the end of the world and destroy it like culturally and morally and spiritually as they do it, which is a miserable place that I don't want any part of or don't want to live. But like, it's so overwhelming to keep studying this stuff and realize that they've been the same for literally thousands of years. And so many people have had the same observations and yet nobody listens. No one changes anything. The things I'm telling you now are not original. In the 1900s, there were many scholars and statesmen saying the same thing. In the 1800s, same. 1700s, same. 1600s, same. Just keep going all the way back in history and you're going to find it all the way into BC times. People were saying the same thing about Jews. It is unbelievable how consistent these people are. It's quite admirable, actually. If,
Wow.
if they weren't bad, it'd be very admirable. But no one ever listens and no one ever changes. No one ever does anything about it. They just keep achieving their agenda. So it's really frustrating to feel so helpless studying all this stuff and knowing all this stuff and knowing it's probably not going to make any difference. And I always think, screw this. Why do I do this? I should just find something else to do. But then I just feel like this moral duty to keep this knowledge alive because I know that knowledge is being wiped away because everyone's using AI increasingly to just answer kind of like every question that they have.
Yeah.
And AI is probably going to be the most censored type of knowledge, probably in history.
Yeah,
For
because
sure.
it's all being sort of concentrated. It's all being concentrated and then it's being spit back out, but with filters. And those filters, of course, that's the most important part. What is being filtered out, right?
That's
Yeah.
scary stuff, man. Hey, there's a question for you, Cato, in the chat. I'm curious,
Yeah.
since you are not a Christian, what role do you personally believe Bible prophecy plays in any of this, if anything?
That is a really good question. So what I believe, and we talked about this the last time I was on, and I know you guys don't agree with me on this, which is fine because I can't tell you I'm right or wrong. This is my perspective. I believe the end times prophecy is a script. I call it the end times script. What it is if you can imagine a conspiratorial group of people who wants to take over the world, and they want to get most people to consent to it, they want minimal resistance to it. How are they going to package that? It's not easy to take over the world. But if most people believe in God and have certain ideas about God, and they can package the take over the world into something that God wants, then you can gain consent because people are going to think it's good. It's what God.
Oh,
No.
okay. If you could,
No.
I think his phone died. This
Hmm,
happened last time, bro. Remember this happened last time?
I don't remember.
Okay. Hey, hold on. I'm gonna message him to get back on. Hold on. Use the same link. Dang it!
Sorry,
Right in the
guys.
middle.
Yeah. That was good. That was a good question.
He'll answer it.
Yeah, hopefully he'll be able to come back.
Maybe he'll get on his laptop right now. I just messaged him.
Yeah, we got
Dude.
some new people in the chat, guys. If you want to ask questions to Cato
yeah.
or us, let us
Welcome.
know. Don't ask me anything. I don't know anything.
Or
but-
as a welcome, or as our friends would say, shalom.
Is this a good time for me to announce that I just recently found out that that I hail from my mom's side from the tribe of Judah?
And you're fired. I'm just kidding.
I need to get like some new clothing or something.
Bro, you
I
need one of
thought
these.
about this. I do
need one of
need
these.
one of those. I do need one of those. I need to get like a flag or something.
How much percentage though? Do you know?
I don't know. I gotta.
Are you like Elizabeth Warren Indian? Is it like 0.03?
No, he went down and he there's like a name that he found, like the name that was carried on. Yeah. And I can't remember what it is.
Is it Netanyahu?
It's Meloskovsky or whatever.
Moloskovsky? Dude, crazy.
Dude.
This stuff's wild, man. And I don't want it to come off as like, oh, we hate them and like wish ill on them and they shouldn't exist and blah blah blah. Bro, we haven't
Right.
said anything. We haven't said anything like that. What
Right.
we're saying is we're treating them the same way as we treat everybody else. Why is it okay to like criticize Russia attacking Ukraine? You know what I mean?
Right.
And we can give arms and weapons to Ukraine to continue a slaughter where arguably probably close to like 1 million people have died. Okay. And it's just atrocious. And that's okay to criticize. But when this country's doing almost the same thing, actually it's not the same thing. It's like unilateral or whatever. It's just one side just eviscerating the other, you know?
Right.
Criticizing that means that I'm an anti-Semite. No, I just think that like murdering people is not a good idea. I think it's a sin. So I'm going to say that here, and I'm going to say that when Russia does it, and I'm going to say it when Muslims do it, and I'm going to say it when the Chinese do it. Like, what do you mean? I'm just being consistent. I'm not giving people a pass because of theology, right? Sin is sin. Theology is an interpretation. Theology is an opinion. But sin is sin, and it's clearly defined. There's no gray area. You know what I'm saying? And dude, here's the thing. Like, look at it objectively. We have this, and I want to ask Cato about this when he comes on. We have this kind of opinion that's been beaten into our heads about like Islam and Muslims, and they're the grand enemy, right? Like they're the worst religion on the planet. Agreed. Horrible shit in there, like just atrocious stuff, right? But then look at the freaking Talmud.
Right.
And it's the same thing. It's the same freaking thing. It's pedophilia. Oh, shoot, I can't say that. Okay, so it's what I just said. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
killing your enemies. It's the evisceration of everybody that's not you. It's
Right.
the same freaking thing. Okay. And they get a pass, but these guys are supposed to be our mortal enemies. And we need to have terror lists for them. And we need to go to war to eradicate them and give them freedom. But that's the same. It's the same coin. It's the opposite sign of the same coin.
Yeah, but not for all of them, right? I mean, the people that the Jews that follow the Talmud are not all the Jews, right? And that's
It's not all the Jews, Dennis, but it's a lot.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a lot. I don't know. I've never heard of the Talmud until, in the last 2-3 years or whatever it's been. I didn't know. And I grew up with Jews. I was literally raised with Jews. My best friends were Jewish. I mean, I remember going to their bar mitzvah when I was young. Chicago just had so many in just my neighborhood, and it was a rich neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I wasn't rich, but we cleaned their homes and stuff. But but I never once, heard anyone bring up the Talmud or what. I didn't even know what it was.
They're not going to. They're not going to. This isn't stuff that they like talk about openly. It's in their synagogues. It's in their homes when they do their Shabbat dinners. It's in their you know what I mean? It's like a close knit thing, and it's held. You think they're going around talking about this stuff openly? People would be like, get out of our country.
Right. And I understand what you're saying. I still don't think it's that widespread in especially even in Western the Jews in the West. I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a lot of Jews that don't even know what the Talmud is.
They might not know what the Talmud is, but even the culture itself, okay, is very Talmudic. So the way you raise your kids, the things you do in your family, the prayers you say,
okay, yeah,
you might. There he is.
He's back.
Yeah,
Nice.
I lost you at some point.
You're all good. Hey, do you remember the question, Dennis?
I could ask it again.
Okay, prophecy.
Yeah, what role is prophecy? What's the role, if anything? What do you believe? And you were in the middle of kind of.
You're right in the middle.
Oh yeah, I gave you guys a whole long-winded explanation, but yeah, I think basically the long story short is being manufactured. I think prophecy is being manufactured. It's a duplication of what is considered to be biblical prophecy, because they want people to believe that the end times are happening, so they consent to things and allow things to happen. But at the end, it's really just going to be a bunch of psychopaths who duped everybody into consenting to a world government and this authoritarian super state that's super diabolical. And at that point, it's going to be so powerful, no one will really be able to do anything about it, because there's going to be a, authoritarian surveillance everywhere. We're already in a kind of a total surveillance state, but once there's enforcement behind that surveillance, nobody will really be able to resist the sort of all-powerful, all-seeing eye type of government.
And do you think like Israel's going to run that authoritative state?
That's kind of what the prophecy would suggest, or whether you believe it's prophecy or whether it's just end time script, like I say, that's what would be suggested, that they are basically building up so that they will be the sort of center of the world government. That is pretty much said in the Bible. That is biblical prophecy, says that Israel will sort of like rise up and be the sort of like the center of like the world's world courts, I think, and so on. And that is like, it's basically just a repackaging, or the New World Order conspiracy, which people have been talking about for years, is kind of just a repackaging of what Jews call the world to come. They don't call it the New World Order, they call it the world to come, but it's basically just a Jewish New World Order where they rebuild the world. They destroy the old world, rebuild a new one, and they're in charge of it. And if you listen to them, they'll do a much better job of ruling the world because they have better values and better sense of justice, and they're much better leaders, and they're not going to let the world keep destroying itself the way it always does. But when you look at the sort of Jewish track record, last time they created a big revolution and were in charge was Bolshevik Russia, where there was widespread starvation and famine and genocide and even cannibalism. So I would have to differ with the idea that they'll do a better job running the world than anybody else, but that's sort of the idea of the world to come. So do I personally think that the future will be led in a world government located in Israel? I mean, I don't know if I believe that or not, but that's definitely where it seems like they want things to go. I would definitely say that, yeah.
So do you think the prophecies in the Bible are actually written by God, or do you think it's just like a no? What do you think?
Yeah,
No,
who wrote
not
it?
at all.
Yeah, who wrote this script, this end time script?
I would assume Jews did. I mean, it's their book, right? The Bible is basically a Jewish book.
Not the New Testament.
And for the most part, well, I mean, we could kind of debate that. I mean, it sort of depends how you define Jews. Pretty much all the Christians were Jews before they became Christians, right? So, and then that kind of depends whether you consider Jews to be followers of Judaism or whether they're ethnic Jews, and there's a whole debate there. But pretty much I would say the Old Testament is a completely Jewish book, and the New Testament was at a minimum heavily influenced by Jews, or all the key actors in it were formerly Jews, like they had just been Jews a little bit earlier. So thousands of years later, you have all these different people from all over the world who are Christians, but I think most of them are basically following along with prophecy that is pretty much invented by Jews. And also, I tend to believe that a lot of the Bible has been modified, and particularly the Old Testament. I think a lot of the Old Testament has been modified probably thousands of years ago to say certain things. Like Yahweh, to me, Yahweh is obviously a diabolical character. He does a lot of diabolical things, but somewhere along the line, they said, hey, he's the creator of the whole world and he created everything, so he's God. And that's a pretty easy little line to stick in somewhere. If you want people to recognize your diabolical God as the God, you could just stick that line in somewhere and then keep reprinting it. And at some point, people will be like, oh, yeah, that's God, because look, it says right here in this book. So, I don't take the Old Testament to be authoritative at all. And the New Testament, I think there's far better values and a far better sort of like ethical system. And I think Jesus was a great spiritual leader with good values, and if people followed those values, society would be good. But it's so intertwined, it's so mixed up with so many Jewish beliefs and Jewish values, and particularly just prophecies. And the Jewish prophecies are where I think today people are being super led astray, because Christian prophecies are basically the same as Jewish prophecies with a different ending, but for the most part it's the same thing. So it'd be really easy to make those things happen and dupe people who believe those are good things, and then at the end just sort of twist up and say, hey, surprise, you thought it was going to end this way, but actually it's going to end that way. Sorry, you lose.
Yeah.
So that's my tip.
But with that logic, with that logic, the Jews would then kill Jesus, and make that whole thing up? Like, or did they actually do it, or did they make it all up, or did they do it on purpose so that they can spin it? I mean,
That's a really good question. I like this question because, so you guys know about the Talmud, right? I think we've talked about that before, but the Talmud is basically, it's not fair to call it the Jewish Bible because it's definitely not the Bible. Their Bible, quote unquote, would be the Old Testament, what they call the Tanakh.
right.
But the Talmud is a very, very lengthy collection of books, like 60 books, very lengthy. It's over 6,000 pages. But it's basically the entire Jewish religion up until roughly the sort of diaspora began. So after 70 AD-ish, when pretty much Judea was destroyed and then the Jews were dispersed, from that point on, for the next 7 centuries, which is quite impressive, there's a huge movement by all the Jewish scholars to basically piece back together Judaism and codify it all, because up until that time, it had basically been all in the heads of the rabbis. They had been sort of keeping it a sort of a verbal tradition. So the Talmud was not supposed to be written down. It was supposed to be kind of a secret code that was passed on only by the rabbis. And if you play a several thousand-year-long telephone game, and the only people who are playing the telephone game are literate elites in power, then you're probably going to get a pretty twisted view of whatever the old religion was, right? But be that as it may, they basically got together and started codifying their religion and wrote it down to the Talmud. So it's a very, very lengthy book. So the Talmud is part religion, parts, different like life advice, part stories, like historical accounts. And one of those historical accounts that I find really fascinating is the trial of Jesus, because the narrative, the Jewish Talmudic narrative about the trial of Jesus is very different than the Christian narrative, because he was put on trial. He was put on trial for being a sorcerer because he had magic powers. And the fact that he had magic powers is acknowledged in the Talmud. They're literally saying he had the ability, him and his followers had the ability to do magic, but they considered it to be black magic. So they tried to convict him as a sorcerer. And they also felt that he was being more or less in league. If he wasn't like a spy for the Romans, he was definitely helping the Roman cause, because we have to remember this whole time they were at war against Rome, right? So they tried him in a very public trial, convicted him, called witnesses, did everything, but they did all of it according to Jewish law. This was very important. There was no interference by Romans in the Talmudic trial and execution of Jesus. It was all Jewish. So they're taking full accountability because they're saying Jesus is one of us. Jesus is a Jew. He's a Jewish rabbi, basically, but he's gone astray. So because he's one of ours, we have authority over him. Romans have no authority. It's all us. And he is, by Jewish law, he is a sorcerer, he is an idolater, he's a heretic, and therefore he has to be executed because he refuses to reform himself. So they executed him not on a crucifix, by stoning. So in the Jewish narrative, he is executed by Jewish judges and only Jews. Romans have nothing to do with it, and they kill him in a whole different way, but they do execute him. And then because he refused to sort of like reform himself, they believe in the afterlife he's boiling in a vat of human feces for all of eternity, pretty much. They hate Jesus very much. So I find that to be really fascinating, because in their own accounts, it's a very different account than what Christians say. And, we can talk about the accuracy of historical sources, of course, because then Christians will say, I've read a lot of historical sources and they look legit. There's a lot of evidence that says the Christian narrative is accurate. But then this sort of original religion that was around that time that Jesus was raised in and came from, their own sources give a whole different narrative. So you have to believe one of them or the other is lying. It has to be that. Jews have more of a track record of lying, admittedly, but I find it really fascinating that they present a whole different narrative about that. And it seems like Christians don't even pay any attention to it at all. I've never even personally met a Christian who knew that Jews have an entirely different narrative of Jesus, and where they're not saying like the Romans did it, because in the Christian world, there's kind of a distribution of responsibility for the execution of Jesus. Like the Romans did it, but the Jews were kind of complicit. So it's like the Jews' fault, but they weren't hands-on. But in the Jewish narrative, and Jews hate being blamed. Historically, they hate being blamed for the death of Jesus Christ. It's something they have a really big problem with. But in their own Talmud, they take full responsibility, and they're like, no, it was us, 100% our idea. It was our laws. It was our execution. It was us, full stop. We take full responsibility for executing him. Why? Because he's one of our own. He's one of our people, and no one has a right to try him and execute him but us, and it has to be according to our laws. So that's the whole Jewish narrative, and I find that to be pretty fascinating. And I'm surprised a lot more people, aren't aware of that.
Hey,
So
I think
so
they should be.
Sorry, go ahead.
the Jews might have this alternative narrative in the Talmud, but even in the even in the New Testament, Acts 2:36, Peter talking to the Jews in front of him says, "Therefore, let all Israel be assured of this: God has made this Jesus, whom you crucified, both Lord and Messiah." So in the New Testament, we don't care about the freaking Talmud and its alternative narrative. Even in the New Testament, the apostles call out the Jews specifically for the killing of Jesus, even though it was done through subversion and Roman Empire influence and this and that. The Jews are 100% blamed in the New Testament.
They're definitely responsible. Yeah, in both narratives, they're responsible for sure.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, what I think is really interesting is something that you can glean from all this is that Jews are very, very much admitting in their own historical record that Jesus was a true historical figure. And even though they certainly don't believe him to be the Son of God, they definitely believe that he had supernatural powers. And they definitely believe he was very influential. He had a very large following. He was a very, very big problem. So if you think the Jew, if you think the Pharisaic rabbis at that time were bad and evil, and they had a really big problem with this guy Jesus, and that probably means Jesus was really good. And that's coming from the Jewish narrative, even setting the whole Christian narrative aside, that's coming from them. So if nothing else, they're really admitting that Jesus was a powerful character spiritually because he had these supernatural powers, and he was what they would consider to be bad. So actually he was really good.
And that doesn't make you like want to dig deeper into, well, I got to find out what's true here. I need to know which version is true. I mean, do you think that both of them are false? Or, I mean, because you can't just say, well, I think that the Jews are in control, or so terrible, but in their Talmud, that what they're writing, like that they're right about what they're saying. Like why would they, or let's say they are being honest in their view. Like how do you look at it from knowing all this information, from digging in so deep? Like how do you see Jesus in all of this? Like is he just a fictional character? I mean, because he did say he was a son of God. Like he was very clear in the Bible with this. So what do you think, Cato? That was kind of my question from the beginning that I wanted to ask you, is like, where do you place Jesus in all this? Where do you place like, God in all of this? Where do you place the future? Like what happens when you die? Like, what do you think about all this stuff? I'm really curious.
I like it.
Yeah. I don't have really well-developed beliefs about all that, admittedly. So that's not really a question.
He's too busy freaking researching the
Jews, know what happened. Yeah. Well, I'm a lot more concerned with, I would say my primary concern is the kind of world and the kind of country that I live in. And I don't want to live in a country or world controlled by Jews, because I know their moral code. I know what they stand for. I know what they believe. I know what their end goals are. I just know how they roll. And basically any civilization or society or system that's good for Jews is bad for everybody else. That's a very, very consistent thing throughout all of history. Many sources from different points in history, different languages, different cultures, different religions, because even the Muslims had issues with Jews. And the Muslims were very powerful for a big portion of history. When you find that level of consistency and you realize whatever belief is true, I don't know, I can't tell you. But I can tell you that
I can tell you that boom.
Twice. Dang it.
It's interesting that he doesn't have like deeper thoughts on this. When he spends so much time researching like this mortal enemy of the Christians themselves.
Right.
Like you back?
Nice.
Can you hear us?
I think so. Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Okay. I was just saying to Dennis, it's interesting that you don't have deeper like thoughts on this or beliefs on this when so much of your world right now is like wrapped up in researching the mortal enemies of Christianity. Like there's a reason those things collide so powerfully, and they have for freaking 2,000 years. And that started with Jesus and the apostles. The whole New Testament is the writings of the apostles and the words of Jesus. And all of it is chastising the Jewish
Yeah,
leadership.
you'd be friends with like
You'd be,
Paul.
I'm pretty sure you'd be homies, you know? And so do you think Jesus had magic powers?
I mean, I don't know. I really couldn't tell you. You know, our only sources are sources that are very old and they're sort of conflicting. So I really couldn't tell you what happened then or what happened with Jesus. I mean, everybody is basically reading books that are very, very old and kind of making, you know, a whole bunch of assumptions that sort of evolve from all that. So I can't really say. I mean, I can't make an authoritative statement on what happened back then or what I believe.
Sure.
I really don't know. I'm not
Have
going to
you-
say it didn't happen. I would certainly not say it didn't happen. And I wouldn't say I don't believe in Jesus. I definitely believe Jesus existed.
It's
But I don't know if he was a son of God and if he had, you know, all this
it's
stuff.
just
I would say he was
interesting.
definitely my idea of Jesus in my mind, he was basically an anti-Jewish revolutionary. I have tremendous respect and admiration for him because I think he was very, very brave to take on what at that time was essentially more than a government, right? Because
Oh, for sure.
the sort of like Pharisaical rabbis were more than a government. They were the government of Judea, but they were more than that because they also were basically the sort of administrators of what God wanted, and that basically whatever they wanted was what
For
they would
sure.
say God wanted. They were the money changers, they were the bankers, they were the law, they were the Supreme Court. They were basically everything. It was like a sort of consortium of total societal rulers. And to defy them would have basically meant a suicide mission.
For sure.
And he did it anyway. And he created a really big following. Now, I think there was a tremendous amount of dissatisfaction with the Jewish rulers at that time from the common people, because more than likely they were behaving like elites always do. Whenever you have a group of elites who have, you know, tremendous amount of power and they begin to achieve immunity from accountability, just like we have here in the United States now, they become evil. It's just basically a pattern as old as time. And so at that time, I think the Pharisees, and I've written a lot of stuff about how they were very heavily influenced by the sort of, you know, dark demonic beliefs of Babylon and stuff like that. They'd
Oh, for
already
sure.
corrupted their own faith quite a lot. Their faith was very corrupt by that time. So for someone like Jesus to come along, who there's like Jesus definitely existed, and he was definitely very anti-Jewish elites at that time, right?
Yeah.
And that is very, very brave. Now, was he the son of God? I mean, that's just not a question I can answer. You know, I don't even believe that God in the Old Testament is the same as God in the New Testament. There's a lot of stuff that, and I think we touched on this the last time I was here, because there's some consistency, but there's mostly inconsistency. And so I think that God, Yahweh, in the Old Testament is a diabolical spiritual entity of some sort. I don't believe he's the Holy Father that Jesus was talking about. I don't even think they're the same entity. If I had to guess, I'd say Yahweh was some kind of very powerful demonic entity.
Mm.
So, you know, to come along and say, because certain things that Jesus said were sort of acknowledging the fact that Yahweh was God, but then he also refers to him differently. He doesn't say Yahweh, he says the Holy Father, right? And then he, you know, he describes Yahweh, the attributes of, or describes God, the attributes and characteristics of God are very different than the description of God from the Old Testament. So I don't even think we're talking about the same God here. So if you say, is Jesus the Son of God, then I mean, the first question that would come to mind is, which God are we talking about? You know, not Yahweh. So there's just so much that I can't answer. And I know that nobody can answer, because this is kind of like, this is a historical question that's created so much conflict, and wars and civilizations and religions and all stuff have been in continuous conflict ever since Jesus died, pretty much. And that's just not really a question I can answer. But what I can tell you, I can
Interesting.
tell you a ton about Jews and their history and their moral code and stuff. And I don't want to live in a world controlled by Jews. That's not a
Yeah.
world that I want to live in. And I know most Christians don't want to live in that too, but I don't think most of them realize it.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong there. Hey, just to be respectful, how much time do you have? We never ask people.
What time do I have?
Yeah.
I don't know. We've already been on for like 2 hours, right?
2 hours. Yeah.
I think we should probably
Yeah.
wrap it up in a little bit.
Okay.
Although I apologize for my internet connection, probably robbed us of like at least 10
No,
minutes.
you're good, man.
It's okay. We'll
we
make it up right
appreciate
now.
you.
We get an
Yeah.
extra 10 minutes.
We appreciate you so much, Cato. I do want to say though, I need to say this. You know, when you say that there's a lot of contradictions from the Old and the New Testament, listen, man, I'm no Bible scholar, but I don't see the contradictions. and I read it every day, and I don't see the contradictions. There's always a connection. There's always, and I've read what people think are contradictions, and then when I read these things and study them myself, I don't see the contradictions. I don't see the difference between the God of the Old Testament, this Yahweh, and Jesus. I don't see it. I do see it as the same. For me, it's very clear. And I did want to ask you this. So like, and I'm not saying this because other people told me to believe this. I went through a really, really rough patch in my life where I didn't believe anything anymore, and I didn't want to believe this stuff anymore. And so when things changed in my life, I had to dig and make a decision. Like, do I actually believe this? Am I going to, follow this thing? And I need to read this for myself and not listen to anyone else.
Yeah.
And doing that really helped me to see the connection between the old and the new. And to me, it's like really fascinating and amazing and beautiful, the brilliance of the Bible and how they connect. Now, I just want to ask you this question. Have you read the Gospels yourself, like to sit down and actually read through the Gospels in the Bible? I'm just more curious if you've done
Gospels is like New Testament, the first 4 books.
Yeah, no, I know. No,
Yeah.
I haven't read it in detail. I'm
Okay.
I'm going through a really I'm doing right now, I'm in the process of doing it, and I'm like posting this on a regular basis, like weekly, but on my Substack, I'm doing basically a very in-depth deconstruction of the Old Testament, like literally verse by verse. And
Wow.
and I'm still doing that. I mean, this is going to be a multi-year project for me, but
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
it's, I mean, the Bible is so impactful. I would say the Bible is, I'm pretty sure there's not even a close second, but should be the most impactful book in all of human history.
Yes.
in my
For
opinion.
sure.
And I doubt I don't think there's much debate about that, because of all the ripples that it's had throughout all of human civilization. So if you're going to, and I love to study, I love to read, I like to be intellectual. So if there's anything that's worth creating a tremendous amount of like intellectual effort on and analysis on, it would be the Bible.
For sure.
So I had kind of a sort of, I was in basically kind of a dark place because of studying all of this dark stuff that I study, all the conspiratorial, all the counter narrative, but I've been primarily focused on the political and the historical and the economic for most of this journey, which for me, it's been over 5 years now. And I read a lot. I mean, I read on average probably 2 hours a day at least. So I read a lot. I've read a lot of books, and I'm really, really interested in sort of getting to the bottom of all this stuff. And around 2022, I felt very compelled to start digging into the Bible because at that time, I found so many in the evil side, whether you want to believe it's Jews or Satanists or, whatever, because a lot of people say it's like satanic, pedophiles or whatever. Regardless of what it is, these people are very, very, they have an absolutely visceral hatred for Jesus. And they tend to be very well versed in the sort of Christian mythology. They know the Bible. They're, like it said, I know that Christians say this, that, and like, more or less, I'm paraphrasing, but basically no one has as much of a grasp, or someone who has an excellent, perfect grasp on scripture is the devil, right? So you can say that these super evil people, they're not just any sort of garden variety of evil. They're very anti-Christian. They're very, very anti-Christian. It's like destroying Christ and the church and Christian laws and Christian society seems to be an absolute top priority for them. So I thought, and at that time, I wasn't really too much into the sort of Jewish aspect of that. I just understood that their enemy is Christianity. So I thought, I feel like a duty to really delve deep into the Bible and start to look into it and read it from not any perspective other than my own. Just act like as though I found it in a cave, like I was just doing an archaeological dig and I found it in a cave, and see what the words mean to me. And I started with the Old Testament and I started reading it. And the more I read, the more I thought, this God, and even the terminology they use is inconsistent because the name Yahweh is not even mentioned until well into Exodus, I think. So anyway, the idea of God, because mostly the word they use is Elohim, and Elohim is a plural word, right? So, which is already weird. So, but the more I read about it, the more I thought, it's very hard for me to accept the idea that this entity has any love for humanity at all. I don't think Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, has any love for humanity. He seems like he wants to control humanity, but he's also very exasperated and frustrated with humanity, and is half the time wants to eradicate them, half the time just wants to enslave them and control them. I don't feel like that squares at all with the idea of the Holy Father of Jesus, who says God loves you, and because God loves you, he wants you to have good values and live a good life, and he will forgive you. He wants to guide you, but he will also forgive you. That is nothing like the God of the Old Testament, who, if you just piss him off, he will wipe out part of your civilization. He did that even with the Jews in Exodus, right? He had the Levites go and slaughter basically as many Jews as they could, go all the way through the camp, slaughtering men, women, and children, and come all the way back slaughtering them. And he did that just because they pissed him off. I mean, that is basically a terrorism campaign. And I don't see how that squares at all with the idea that of God as a holy father who loves humanity, but needs to sort of like get them on the right track, which would be like the Jesus idea. So to me, it doesn't square at all. But I became really fascinated with the Old Testament because at that point I realized the God of Jews is the God.
Oh, come on.
Oh, no, man. This is so good.
Oh,
3 times. Dang.
2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You know, I would talk to him for another 2 hours just
Yeah,
about this,
just
but
about
I
this.
don't want to
Of course.
drag it out if he's got to go. Plus, I think
Yeah.
there he
Oh,
is.
cool.
No,
Thank
very
you.
bad connection. I don't know why this keeps happening.
Yeah, it's okay.
But anyway, so for me, like I disagree with that. But of course, there's been not thousands, millions, tens of millions of people throughout all of history who have disagreed on that, and there's
Yeah.
really no answer, right? It's like a debate that keeps on going. The debate's been going on for thousands of years, and I don't think it's ever going to stop. So you know, that's just my belief. That's where I come from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I say something really quick? You know, when you talk about Yahweh in the Old Testament, and your view on him, I have to say though, from reading the Old Testament, I don't have that same view. And it's just because I read the Old Testament. And when I read the Old Testament, I don't get that same view of him just being this diabolical being, or, you know, it just gets pissed off and just kills people. Cause that's not what happens when you just sit and read it. It's not really what happens. If you read portions and not the whole storyline together, yeah, you can gather anything if you want. But when you actually read it from start to finish and slowly, it doesn't, I just don't see the same, like what you're saying. I just don't see it. And I wouldn't just like make that up, or I'm not saying that because of my upbringing or not. It's just, I don't read it that way, you know, but I do want to say also, there's a couple things in the chat. There was a person that said, that asked this question: who do you think should run the world if it's not the Jews?
That's a pretty good question. I mean, that kind of
Damn,
suggests
our
that
chat
somebody
is
has
on
to
it.
run the world,
Yeah.
right? Huh?
Our chat's on it. Like, they've been having good questions tonight.
Yeah.
No, I think, yeah, I agree. I mean, that the very question implies that somebody has to run the world, right?
Mhm.
And I don't really like the idea of some group running the world, because the way that I see things shaking out, this is very consistent throughout history, is what ends up running the world is power. Bottom line, whoever is the most powerful ends up being in charge of basically every nation or every civilization or every empire. And it's almost never, you know, the nicest people. It's pretty much almost always the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Whoever's the most crafty, the most cunning, the most manipulated, the most brutal, the most, you know, whoever is just the best at insinuating their ways in power and then hanging on to power through brute force once they get it, that's who ends up being in charge. I like the idea of a civilization that's educated and has good morals and has good values and tries to collectively say, we don't want to be run by tyranny, because that's happened. It just keeps happening throughout all of human history. At some point, we'll always end up run by these diabolical, wicked tyrants that just want to kill everybody. We don't want that anymore. So let's all get together and build something better. And I think that's basically how America started. And I think that would be a good thing.
Would you be okay if your concept of whatever Jesus was, if he ruled the world? Did it cut out?
No, he's
I
thinking.
don't know.
Okay.
That's kind of a difficult question to answer.
Just mental experiment.
Assuming that he was the way that he's described in the what?
Just a thought experiment. Crap. I think I froze it.
Did we lose him again?
Yeah.
Oh, dang, dude.
Damn it.
Man.
That's
okay.
Oh man. We gotta.
It's getting late anyway. We should probably. You know, if he comes back, we'll end it. We'll end it.
I want him to answer the question.
Oh no, I'd like to hear that answer also.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah.
I almost want to, and I hope he comes back on so I could ask him if he'd be down. I would want to talk to him just about this one time. Not to convert him and pressure and stuff like. No, just think about it. We don't have a ton of conversations with people as to why they don't believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
You know? So I just think that would be like a really interesting conversation to have with somebody like him who's so immersed in like the Jewish stuff and the history. You know what I mean? There's the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if the enemy for him is the Jewish people who are trying to take over the world, and their enemy is Jesus, how are you not? Boom, Cato. Before it cuts out again, would you be okay with the Jesus that you're conceptualizing ruling the world?
If he was like the world king?
World king, baby.
Yeah, that'd probably be better than any alternative. I'd have to admit that.
Hey, guess what? That's how the Bible ends, is with Jesus ruling the world.
Come to this side, Cato. We got plenty of room, buddy.
All the prophecy stuff, everything you're describing, everything we're talking about, everything that's being manipulated and being fulfilled by the Jews and by Christians and by Peter Thiel and all these assholes, everything culminates with Jesus coming back, killing everybody that's not Christian, and ruling the world. You know, that's how it ends. So it's interesting that Jews think their Messiah is going to come and rule the world and kill everybody that's not Jewish. Muslims think their Messiah is going to come, kill everybody on the earth that's not Muslims, and Christians believe the exact same thing. You know what I mean? Because we, at least us and the Jews, pull from a lot of the same passages that say those kinds of things in the Bible. However, all the prophetic stuff in the Old Testament that talks about the Messiah coming points to Jesus. They deny it. They deny it vehemently.
Wow.
Okay. And then the Christians of today accept the New Testament and everything Jesus did and said, and are like, oh yeah, the Messiah came. And these guys rejected it. And that's why the world hates them. They're under a curse. But it would be really cool if one day we could get on and just, talk about this kind of stuff, because like I was just telling Dennis, it's interesting. Your perspective's so like unique and fascinating because you're, one, not Christian, two, very, very like well-read and immersed in like the Jewish side of things, and now the Old Testament side of things, which is where the Jews are pulling from a lot of. Okay. But it would be cool to engage in this conversation just to get like your perspective on things, not to like convert you and to have a freaking like laying on of hands and you fall on the ground or something like that. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm just talking about having a conversation about your like mindset on these topics in particular. Just from even since you're doing Old Testament research and stuff, like even asking us questions about what normal kind of sane-minded Christians, you know what I mean, how we interpret those things and how we take it and how it connects. Because listen, you're not wrong in the Old Testament. And Dennis, hear me out. You're not wrong in the Old Testament. God is pretty jacked up. He does a lot of stuff that today you'd be like, oh man, I mean, everything we're complaining about Israel doing is what God did in the Old Testament. Seems like he set a model for them. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is,
I would agree.
There's a reason for that. And the reason for that is because it's all supposed to point to the new covenant in Christ and how he is the fulfillment of those things. And God no longer has to do those things. And that all those things will be fulfilled on the new earth. And it goes deeper, you know what I mean, than all that. But I'm just saying there's a reason these things played out the way they did in the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, God's how can I put this? God was extremely tribal. He had one group of people. He had the Jews.
Right.
Everybody else belonged to not God. They belonged to the other. This is wild, bro. I'll recommend a book for you, which is really cool. I think you'll actually really dig it. The other nations belong to the other gods, to the other Elohim, the same term that's used for Yahweh repeatedly. It says that the other Elohim gained an inheritance, which was the other nations, and Yahweh took for himself Israel, his allotted inheritance. Right. Okay. So in the Old Testament, it's almost this like, it's almost this like Game of Thrones. This is where the Greeks, the Romans,
I agree with that.
The Greeks, the Romans, all of these guys, they all plagiarize their pantheon based on the Old Testament. Okay. And so God cares primarily about Israel. He tries to take care of them. He tries to nurture them. He tries to give them laws to guide them and all this stuff. And they repeatedly keep screwing up and like going and worshiping the other gods. And he's like, oh, that's the game you want to play? Then I'll treat you like I'm treating them, because I don't care about them. They belong to the other demonic races or the demonic fallen angels. So I'll wipe you out too if that's what you want. You make your bed, you sleep in it. And then comes Jesus. And Jesus is like, hey, you guys are doing it all wrong. I got you. All you got to do is have faith in me. Look, your forefathers for 2,000 freaking years screwed up, and Yahweh punished them over and over and over and over and over again to show you that you can't do it. You need something better. I'm the better thing. Literally, all you have to do is believe in me, and I got you. And then they're like, okay, kill that guy. You know what I mean? Like it's dude, it's crazy. But when you see the big picture, it actually is like a pretty beautiful thing. You know what I mean? So anyway, if you want to have in your research and stuff, if you want to like ever get on and just like pick our brain on stuff that you're looking at and reading, and you want to have like a sane Christian opinion on what's going on in that passage, you can still come to your own conclusions, but it's always good to get more data. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that'd be fun. I think that'd actually be super fun.
For sure. Cato, man, this is great, dude. I really enjoy these conversations with you, man. I hope that you stay safe.
Yeah, I like coming on as well.
Thank you. You've taught us a lot.
Last time I came, you guys were afraid that it was gonna like be censored and that you guys were gonna get a lot of backlash and stuff. Sure. And I think that probably did happen.
Hey, we kind of did.
Yeah, it did. It's okay. It's okay.
But I never really found out it's God or.
Hold on, it cut out. You never really what?
No, you cut out. You cut out. Can you start again? You never found what?
It's on the last one, because I know.
It's very intermittent.
You guys were worried about the controversy.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'll just say I'm less worried about this one because the tide has changed. You know what I mean? It's shifted. But it's good. It's all good, man. It's conversations that I think people need to hear, and we need to keep having. Yeah. Dude, we love you. Thank you for coming on. Like Dennis said, wherever you're at, stay safe, because even in Mexico, you know, the president out there has some freaking ties to Milankovitch or whatever his name is, whatever Yahoo's name was. And now in Germany with the freaking ADF or ADF getting taken out. Crazy stuff going on, man. Crazy stuff. But, oh my God. Hey, we can't.
Stop is not Mexico, by the way. I don't think I'm gonna.
Cato, your Wi-Fi only allows for clear video or audio, because this whole time your video has been crap, but your audio was okay, and now your video is clear, but there's no audio.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Cool, brother. Hey, we'll let you go.
We'll have you back on again soon.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. Thank you for coming on, and we'll be praying for you, just for safety and for wisdom and everything you're doing, brother.
Yeah.
Okay. And just hey, log off. But on the right-hand side, I think it should tell you how much of your video has uploaded. Okay. So just leave it open or whatever you could do until it says uploaded all the way. I hope that helps somehow. Dude, because on the right, when I'm looking at it, it says 0% uploaded for him.
Oh, shoot.
So just leave it open until it says 100%.
Well, probably because he just came right back. I don't know. Maybe that's why.
I hope so. If not, we've got the YouTube. The YouTube recorded it.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Cato. I don't know if he's still here or not.
I mean, he's talking, but we can't hear him.
Oh, okay. He just got off. Well, that
Cool,
was cool.
man.
That was fun, man. Yeah, I
I
think
love
we need to be
Gato.
praying for him. Yeah, and I think that, I don't know. I have a feeling that he's going to come to see. Again, we know it's a work of God, right? It's a spiritual awakening that happens, in any person. So I pray though that through his research and um, yeah, through his research, I really pray that he comes to know the living God. And imagine how blown his mind's going to be when he
Oh,
does come to realize that, and he starts to put it all together.
bro.
He's going to be a force for
I'm like
Christianity.
blown away hearing his stuff. I don't know it. You know what I mean? I'm getting it like secondhand information. I didn't read all the
Right.
books. I didn't do all the history or all the research, all that stuff. So
Sure,
I'm just
sure.
hearing it from him. And as a Christian, I'm like, oh, dang, that's crazy
Yeah.
because it makes sense with a lot of other stuff, like even in the Bible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's going to cut, well, hopefully, God willing, he comes to it in reverse. He's got all
Right.
the research and all the history and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And then, God willing, he comes to faith and he connects the dots in a whole new way. And it's
Yeah.
like, you're right. He's totally going to be a force to be freaking reckoned with. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing, man. We as Christians, we have to understand that we can't get frustrated with people when they don't see it, right? He's done more research than you and I put together. He's done more research than probably our chat
For
has put together.
sure.
And if he still doesn't see, just because he doesn't have that spiritual discernment. He was not awakened by the grace of God. And I think that we need to be, as Christians, like very careful how we cut people, how we treat people, how we respond to
Yeah.
people, you know, um, because there was people even in the chat like, oh, this is what atheists believe, this new age stuff believe, and not to, no
Yeah.
one
But
was mean or
he's not
no one,
Christian. So,
right, exactly. And if I didn't have the Holy Spirit guiding me and teaching me and showing me and awakening me and opening my eyes to this stuff, I'd think the same thing. And I did think that, maybe a few years ago, even when I was challenging you on, man, I don't even know if this Bible thing is true, like put
oh, for
together and all this
sure.
stuff,
I remember.
and yeah, we would talk about this, and there was no way that I could just like accept it, right? Until Jesus showed up.
Dude,
And
for
then it
sure.
wasn't even a question for me. I obviously I was curious and still wanted to learn and still wanted to see how, but I was able to just be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I may not understand it all and how it all is put together and all that stuff, but man, is it true? And that to
Yeah.
me is the difference there. And that's only and always a work of the Holy Spirit.
Dude, for sure. I mean, the idea of going from a heart of stone to a heart of flesh, that's literally the work of the Holy Spirit. Only God can do that, right?
Yeah.
Even understanding scripture, only God can make somebody understand it. Like
Right.
somebody can read scripture, like an atheist can read scripture and use it to criticize and bash and
Yeah.
counter and debate, right?
Karl
Or
Barth. Yeah.
exactly. Or a
Mhm.
Christian can read scripture and be like, "Oh, the word of God, it gives me life. This is nourishment to my soul." Same
Right.
words, same book. You know what I'm saying? Two
Right.
totally different realities. And that's strictly the work of the Holy Spirit. So whether you agree with what he was saying, whether you disagree with what he was saying, whether you think where he's at right now is new agey and atheists say the same thing, you're probably not wrong. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
dude's not Christian. And
Yeah.
our response is, oh, we got to pray for that guy.
Yeah. We need
It's
to
the
pray
same
for him. Yeah.
response. Like, it doesn't matter what you think of him. He's a dude that's not saved. You got to pray for him and you
Yeah.
got to love him. You
Right.
literally have to love the people that aren't saved. And
Right.
we can criticize each other and we could within the body of Christ, right? We can like help each other and iron sharpening iron. But for the outside world, our response is always supposed to be love, prayer.
Right.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing else. There's no room. There's no room for you to be like antagonistic
Right.
and have hatred or
And
something
that's the
like that.
biggest problem with Christians in general, right? It's because they are antagonistic and they are
That's one of the biggest problems.
one of the biggest problems. Yeah, we have many, but yeah, I mean, I agree with Melanie in the chat. She says she was raised Catholic and walked away from God for many years, but wow, when the truth was revealed, I can't get enough. And she says something cool. I
The
took hearing
best.
about giants, and that had me to look at scripture totally differently. Melanie, if you haven't read the book Unseen Realm by Dr. Michael Heiser, there's an audio for it, and you could get the book. It is incredible, and if you like the whole giants thing, it's going to rock your world and change your view on how you actually read the Old Testament. I think, because it did that for me.
That's the book I'm going to recommend that he read.
Yeah, I think that coupled with the Old Testament, to get
Oh,
started, I
game
think
changer.
it's gonna have to make him consider, some things that he didn't know or he thought maybe differently of. But again, it's a work of God, and we need to pray for him. How cool would it be though, if in our next conversation with Cato or one of the next conversations, he's like, guys, something happened, like
Hey,
something happened. Jesus
and
showed up.
that's what happens when you pray for people, right?
For sure.
There's more power
Oh,
in
100%.
everybody here. There's 22 people on here watching this right now. There's more power in 22 people praying for him
Yeah.
than in us debating with him for 22 years.
Trying to convince him through our own intellect,
simple, bro.
right?
It's that freaking
Yeah,
simple.
it's a spiritual discernment that has to happen, and it's changed the way I talk to people. It's given me more compassion towards others, more patience towards others. My prayers have changed towards others, and how I pray for them. My whole view on this has changed, and even on the world. Like, it's just a lost, broken world. Like, what do we expect?
That's
What do you
exactly
expect?
right. That's exactly right. And that's why I asked him, like, would you be okay with whatever you think Jesus is?
I like
Would
that
it be
question.
okay
That
if
was
he
really
rules the
good.
world? You know what I'm saying? Because like, what a coinker dinker. Everybody that has a concept of Jesus is like, yeah, he'd probably be the best for the job.
Right. You can't deny that. You can't be like, no,
You
Jesus
can't
would
deny
be
it.
terrible. Like,
You can't deny it.
yeah, even the
And-
Jews can't deny it.
And that's what happens. Like,
Right.
that's the end of the book. It's dope. There's a freaking gold cube that comes out of the sky and Jesus rules on her. Like, what? You can't make that up. Jews couldn't make that up. Like,
Yeah,
how are you going to have this attitude and view towards the Jews and how diabolical they are, and then
Yeah.
think that they wrote the New Testament? Like, sure, genetically they were Jewish. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? But
Yeah.
like, they basically cut themselves out in the New
Yeah.
Testament.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
love it, bro. I love these
Yeah.
conversations.
Hey, someone in the chat's asking if we're going to take people on tonight onto the stream. We were considering it at the beginning before we started, but then we decided not to
Listen,
tonight.
this one was dangerous.
Yeah, this one was a little dangerous, but we would like to do that, maybe one of our next hang sessions, or if someone else is comfortable, if we have a guest on, if we can do it, but
It's
just
a
not
roll.
tonight.
It's a roll of the dice because of this topic and
Yeah.
because of how like cuckoo some people can be.
Yeah.
It would be a huge roll of the dice and a risk to bring in a completely random stranger and him to just like, or her to just yell out some like profane word that
Yeah.
can't be uttered, and then we get like flagged in this video taken. It probably already
Yeah.
will, but I'm just saying it's a risk tonight, which we decided not to take.
Right. But we'd like to do that in the future, and
for sure.
and it's a risk no matter what. When we do it, I think it's a risk. Ben's more of a cowboy here, and he's like, yeah,
This one's just too important. I don't want. We're already hitting on topics that can get us like imprisoned. You know what I'm saying? So like, let's not add to that, right? With the danger of a rando. Dude, but tonight was great. Like, I think a lot of people are opening up to the idea, just even Christianity. I hope we didn't come off as like hateful towards like a group of people or something like that.
Yeah, that's
I hope we just presented, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what has happened historically. There's nothing wrong in talking about these things and saying that they're not good, right? So I hope, even if you are dispensational, even if you think the Jews are God's chosen people to this day, I hope that you agree that sin can be called out and criticized, even when God's chosen people do it. Because go read your Bible. Every time Israel sinned in the Old Testament or New Testament, God called them out, criticized them, punished them, wanted to eviscerate them and start over with Moses, right? Calling out the sin of God's chosen people is not blasphemy. All right. Somebody told me I'm not saved because like I said that they're under a curse right now because they killed Jesus, which I'm pretty sure like the New Testament says. And I'm like, bro, where are you in your walk and in your theology that you have added veneration for Israel to the criteria for salvation?
Well, it's
Where are you?
It's because they just watched too many TV preachers for the last 20 years, like the Jim Hagees of the world and John Hagees and all these people that have just been like, listen, man, I grew up in the same thing. I thought the
I
same
did too.
exact stuff.
I did too.
My
I
parents.
get it.
I have the mugs from that we would get in the mail for sending money to Israel.
For supporting.
Yeah, for supporting. So like I get that, and it's like but I can't reconcile what I read in the New Testament with what is happening today. I just can't, and not just today, but like Cato said, for forever, and I like that perspective from him, because I think we need to understand how deep this goes and how far back it goes. It's not just something in the 1900s, it goes back way further. But listen, man, I do need to get off this because I do. And I gotta do some work.
Bro, but there's still 22 people that are in here and they want to chat with us and hang with us, bro.
And tonight's the chat. Thank you so much, Lynette. It was great to have you back,
she's
especially. And prayers for Lynette and Melanie, thank you, and everyone else, Mark, and even Fruit Inspector who came in late. But all of you who were active, and please remember to like this video so we can get gain some traction.
Oh yeah.
And then I know we're back on, I think, next week,
bro.
For sure.
I think Tuesday we could either take a break or do a hang. Mondo's coming on the 11th, so next Thursday.
Sweet.
We've got Mondo. Oh man, we've got so much to talk about. So much.
Yeah.
I want to talk to him about this kind of stuff. I want to talk to him about updates on Red Heifer stuff because that's popping right now. There's a lot I want to talk to him about, so that's going to be a freaking awesome episode. And he always gives us like 3 hours. He'll give us whatever, So I'm super excited about that, man. Guys, Dennis has to go.
Thank you so much. Gotta go. Sorry, you can blame me. But this was a fun 2 hours and 40 minutes. Don't get mad.
I cannot believe it's been almost 2 hours and 40 minutes. That's crazy. This one flew.
Yes, it did. It did fly by. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Wait, can I tell you real quick one question I didn't get to ask him?
Sure.
Hey, so he's got this idea of how like the tentacles are far and wide globally, right? What is up with the like mass Muslim migration and takeover of a bunch of Western countries? If the tentacles are in control, right? Why are they making that happen? I thought they're like sworn enemies. You know what I mean? Why are they flooding the West with this? Is it to destroy us first and then go after the arch enemy?
It's for us to destroy each other. It's not even for them to destroy us. It's for us to destroy each other so they don't even have to do it. It's the way they start. It's the same way they started all their wars. It's the same way they were on the sides of both wars, right? They just, let's get these people to fight, and then we don't have to even fight them. It is genius. It's evil genius that they've been doing for a long time. That's diabolical, diabolical genius. Yeah,
I'm switching sides, bro. I've converted. I respect the game so much. It's evil genius, but when you step
that's how you know it's demonic.
Dude, you're not wrong.
That's how you know it's demonic.
You're not wrong at all.
This is not human intellect.
Oh my God, dude, you're so right. You're so right. That's a really good spot to end this freaking podcast. Did you just drop the
my pen?
The mic? Don't drop that mic. That's really expensive. You drop your juice box. Perfect way to end. As you hit yourself on your head. All right, guys. We love you. Thank you for hanging out. We'll see you guys Tuesday. Hopefully.
Possibly Tuesday, if not Thursday for sure.
I'm down for a hang session Tuesday. If our friends come. If you guys show up, we'll do a hang session Tuesday.
Yeah.
And we'll put people on. Cool. Yeah. Have a good night, guys.